Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning for our City Council Budget Development Meeting. We'll go ahead and get started. Connie, could you please call the roll?
Gray.
Here.
Cheatham.
Here.
Lurick.
Here.
Mansfield.
Here.
Ortega.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Platt.
Here. Thank you. We'll jump to agenda item number 2. It's fiscal year 2023 non-departmental budget items. Representatives from community organizations will be present regarding fiscal year 2023 allocation requests. Now, Council, my understanding is that we don't have any presentations prepared because you've received all of these in your packets, and it looks like we've got a thing for Sika's Meals, what is this? Yeah, Meals on Wheels as well here. And so we'll just start at the top. And Sika, any questions that you might have for Sika?
I have a
If
question.
you'd come up here, and then if we just remind you to state your name and what organization you're with, that would be fantastic for the
Okay,
people
I'm
watching at
Catherine
home.
Dye with Sika Meals on Wheels.
I'm just curious, what is the cost per meal? Just out of curiosity.
So right now, to get it to the client's door is approximately $8 per meal. That's with the increase in food costs and fuel, things like that.
Okay. Well, you guys are doing really good with that, though.
Thank you.
$8 is,
We're trying to think outside of the box.
yeah, well, you guys are killing it.
We've made some changes to try and save some money too. So we used to get all 7 days of the week worth of meals through Chartwells. And I was able to find a suitable packaged type meal that is shelf stable to replace the ones that we give as frozen meals Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that's saving us $2 a meal. So that was something I was able to do this last few months to help with costs rising.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Some of this need is a meal is not just a snack either, it's an actual meal. And so it's.
Yeah, absolutely. We make sure we cover all of their, 1/3 of their daily nutrition
Yeah.
and keep it low sodium. And try to keep flavor in it as well.
That's great. Thank you. I was just curious what it cost.
Yeah.
How many meals are you distributing a week?
A week. Well, I could tell you per day, we're serving about 180 a day. And that comes out to, by the end of the year, we'll probably be between 50 and 60,000 meals for the year.
Okay, so
And we
does that
can,
count the meals you provide extra, like the Saturday? Okay.
yep, absolutely.
So,
Chris?
Mr. Mayor, this may be a question for you, but it's good having both of you here. So I thought, and I could easily be wrong, that the city, the taxpayers are giving 14 something per meal, and so that's I don't have a problem with it. I'm just confused why I seem to have two different numbers in my head. But it's I
don't believe so.
Okay.
It was on a,
We request so
It
much.
was on a financial report or
We request so
claims.
much per year, and then we just,
Right.
use that throughout the months.
Okay, all right.
And if I could just expand on that a little bit too.
If
So
you
you're
would,
right.
before you expand, if you jump up here, tell everybody
You don't
who
know
you
who
are
I
at
am.
home. I know that, but people at home don't.
Shantae Bloxham with Sika. So you're right. The request comes to be $14.17, I think, per meal, but that also helps us cover the overhead at Sika. And the reason for that the city, has graciously allowed that is because the other funding streams that come through CCOG, the Area Agency on Aging, Medicaid, things like that help reimburse. The cost that they reimburse is $525 or $375, and so that helps us cover that gap to make sure we can continue to pay our staff living wages
Sure,
and keep up with
of course.
vehicle maintenance and all of those kinds of things. So you're right. That's it's
Okay.
$8 to kind of get it to the thing, but that's fuel
That
and the
doesn't
actual
that
raw
doesn't
food
cover the
costs.
overhead
Okay.
of operation.
Right.
Got
Okay,
it.
Right.
all right,
Yes.
all
That
makes
right.
sense.
Thank you very
You
much.
bet.
Good thing I have her for one more day.
I'm headed to the United Way at the
That's
beginning
right.
of next month,
That's right. I heard about that.
so I'll still get to be connected to everyone.
Super. Okay, any other questions? Yes, Josh?
I see that you've anticipated an increase from the number of clients at 338 to about 400. How do you calculate, and in previous years' estimates, have you ever been under that estimate total?
I don't believe so. So I've only been with Sika for a year, but when looking at the numbers, we increase 5 to 9% every year. And I can tell you to date, we've already served 357 unique clients. So we're only halfway through the year.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
And thank you for having unique clients versus just
Today.
numbers.
Yes.
Because they're both important.
I
but-
double checked it this morning just so I knew.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Other questions, council?
No, I just think that the work that you do is so important in every community, not just ours. So I just really appreciate your doing what you do. I know it's hard work and often thankless, but
Well, it's a bonus to see that people are getting better while they're receiving our meals as well. So that's one of my favorite parts when they call and they say, I don't need them anymore. So it means they're being more independent. So it's great.
And I think what you accomplish is you help people either go to their homes as part of their rehabilitation, or you help people stay in their homes so they don't have to
Go to
locate
nursing
out to a
homes,
nursing
which
home or assisted
in turn
living.
costs us more money.
Yeah.
Yes.
well, nobody gets better there anyway.
Well, if you want a humbling experience, go with them when they deliver the meals.
Yeah. It was a good day
It's-
with Mayor Blood.
It was a good day, but yeah, it's definitely a humbling experience, so.
I have a question. Another community I lived in was a little smaller than this, but they had drivers that were volunteers. And that helped really reduce the costs. Because has that been considered here?
I probably couldn't speak to that, but I know we do have volunteers who help us or have pre-COVID with inter-office delivering, because we have the St. Anthony's Place residents that we also serve meals to, and then clerical type things. Right now, though, we have 3 paid drivers, 2 or 3/4 time employees and 1 full-time. And I would like to see us expand in the future, so having them there is very valuable.
I'll just add on to
Yes.
that really
Thank
quick.
you.
Sorry, I should have stayed up
I tell
here.
you couldn't stay back there, could you?
No, I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut. So volunteers would be exceptional, and we always welcome that. What we have found, I don't want to say is a problem, but what is a setback for our program and the essentialness of our program getting out there is, volunteers maybe just aren't as consistent, right, as having staff. And so it becomes a balancing act because it's our responsibility and the dire need to get those meals out every day. And if we don't have a staff member who can kind of back that up if a volunteer can't come. So it is just a balancing act. But like Catherine said, we have found other ways to utilize volunteers that can help cover some of those office things and reduce there so that the focus can be on getting the meal out.
Other questions? Yes, Chris?
This is not a quantifiable question, but based on your experience, either here or in other similar organizations, there's increasing talk about a recession. And lots of, it's seems beyond this is hypothetical now. People who would know are saying it's hard to see how there isn't going to be a recession. Do you have any, particularly in a community like ours where 40% of folks are living marginally, I'm assuming that my thinking would not be off if I assume that you would be hit hard in terms of more new clients as if the economic situation worsens. And what I'm thinking is that we might need to be prepared funding-wise to augment funding, anticipating that we are going to have greater need. Is that a reasonable way to think based on your expertise?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've seen through Area Agency on Aging, the CCOG funds that SECA receives to help cover meals, we're already seeing some of that some of the relief funds that are trickling down to our organization to help cover, increased numbers of people or to help cover the increased cost of things. So we've seen things on that side, but you're right. I mean, the reality is the way it sits today, we don't have the capacity to serve 600 or, 700. And so I think in those circumstances, it then becomes a community ask, what can we do as a community to get some volunteers, and can you commit to 1 day a week? Can you commit to, all these kinds of things? So at that point, it becomes a community-wide effort of how can we make sure that these.
And simply the cost
campaign.
of the meals.
Right.
I mean, with.
Right. And Catherine's done, some really innovative fundraising efforts, for lack of a better word, where now businesses are sponsoring our vehicles and their logos go on our vehicles, and that's been a way to bring in some revenue. And then she is doing a year-long Adopt a Senior campaign. If you want to donate $35, that will provide, X number of meals to a person for X number of days. And so we're always thinking outside of the box, how can we keep making sure that these are coming in and so that we can be as ready as we can be? We can't go from 400 to 600, but can we go from 400 to 425? And
Right.
yeah.
I'd also like to add that we're a part of the Meals on Wheels of America program as members. And I can say that based on what I've heard from other programs, we were very unique in being able to keep our doors open during the pandemic. We were only closed for 2 weeks for meal delivery, but we provided those 2 weeks of meals ahead of time before we closed. But then after that, we found ways to still continue to deliver. So I feel like in a situation like that, we will, be finding ways.
Right.
Somehow our community will come together.
We will persevere, right? I mean, that's the good thing about Pocatello is everybody comes together to make sure that things that need to happen.
Okay, super. Any other questions, council? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And thank you for acknowledging the importance of the program in your community.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's jump to the free clinic.
That will be me today. I'm Amy Azizi with Pocatello Free Clinic. I recently started working there in August. I'm a Master of Social Work, just recent graduate, so I'll be providing counseling services at the free clinic. And then I also am involved in programs management to help manage the different grants that we receive.
Questions for the free clinic?
Hold on, I'm getting there.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just wanted to comment on the new, I don't know what you call it, the mobile
The mobile
unit.
clinic,
Yes, the
yes.
mobile clinic. I got to see that at the United Way, or I guess it was Idaho Gives Day, the celebration, and go inside and everything, and that is amazing. And I was talking to Sherry, and one of the issues that I know that you guys face in terms of the grant money that you get is that it's limited on what kinds of things it can cover. So you've got these new programs and new things that you're doing, but not all the grant money can be used for that. And so that's one of the challenges that you all face in terms of other ways to come up with money, to sort of fill those gaps. So I appreciate the just the creativity and the innovation that you guys are showing in order to serve the community and to reach people where they're at. I mean, to be able to take that places, to take it on the road, so to speak, is incredible. So
Yes.
thanks
Our
for-
medical director, Georgia Mylan, is very passionate about meeting people where they're at and going to where they are. And that means not sitting inside of our office, all of the time and expecting people who face many barriers to reach us. So that's why we've really expanded our outreach efforts to go to Aid for Friends and to Valley Mission Food Pantry at least twice a month to meet people where they're at and help connect them with resources, to conduct health screenings on site, which we've been able to help identify and diagnose hypertension and diabetes and help get people connected to their doctors prior to it becoming more of an emergent situation. So that's, the mobile clinic really has enabled us to do more and more of these activities and
That's
events.
really good. And it just was helpful to understand, what the money, the city gives to the free clinic can do in terms of the things that the grant is not allowed, or the grants are not allowed to be used for, you know? If they say, well, this is a great program and we support the program, but you can't buy equipment or vehicles or anything like that, you know, that there is a need for money that can do those things that the grants can't do. So that was helpful to understand. I just thought I wanted to share that and comment on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have a
Claudia?
question for you. I'm looking at the financials, and your line item 62890 says rent, parking, utilities to the tune of $83,514. And then next to it, it says Portneuf Health Trust. Is that the payee, or do they give you that money? I'm just trying to,
Okay, can you
Make
tell
sure.
me which line item again? Which budget you're looking at, the 22, 23 or 21, 22?
oh God, 22, 23.
Okay,
And then I'm looking at, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. 62,890.
62,890.
It's on the second page of that budget, almost to the middle of the
Okay,
page.
yes.
So is that 83,000 money that you pay to Portneuf Health Trust, or is that funding that you get from them?
It's a combination of both. We do pay rent, but it is a reduced cost. So some of this is the in-kind donations that Portneuf Health Trust provides us.
Okay.
And then the money from the hospital is separate from that. That's directly from corporate?
I would not be able to answer that in full.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right. I have another
Yes,
question.
Chris?
With our housing issues
Yeah.
and increasing homelessness, or, you know, 5 families living in a space intended for one family, that kind of thing, are you seeing, or do you anticipate, based on your experience, any increase in medical issues that occur when people aren't able to live, you know, a healthy lifestyle?
Absolutely. Homelessness is a risk factor for increased health disparities. And we have seen an increase of patients and individuals coming in to access resources. And one of the biggest changes that we at the Free Clinic have experienced this year is the addition of social work at the Free Clinic, which has helped connect individuals who come in with housing resources, help them get connected to the crisis center if they're in crisis. When we go to Valley Mission, recognizing some of those mental health concerns that maybe wouldn't have been recognized, and get them connected to community resources. So yes, the addition of social work has helped us address those rising needs as well.
And then kind of the same question as I was asking Sika. When you take 40% of our population being financially stressed, and then you contemplate the possibility of a recession on top of that, my question is, I'm assuming that I'm going down the right thought trail if I'm looking at a potential situation where we have even greater medical issues for financially stressed folks than we have experienced the past few years.
Yes. And absolutely, that is one of the strengths of the Free Clinic as well, as far as like the innovative and creative talent that we work with. Dr. Misperetta, Dr. Mylan, Sherry, Joseph, Cindy Bundy. It's an incredible team that is always forecasting and looking ahead and trying to predict what's coming. So we were also able to stay open all throughout COVID. That was very important to Dr. Mylan, that we not close the doors on those who are most vulnerable and at need. And so I foresee we are already forecasting and trying to brainstorm what other ways could we fundraise. And that was also part of the reason why we had an increase in the budget that we requested this year, is because we really do feel it's important to get out into the community more often, so that we can do those screenings and find those people who are in highest need.
Has there been an impact on the county indigent fund? Do you have any idea whether?
Our county meeting is coming up next month, and we have not heard if there's been any impact. at this point.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay. Other questions for, yes, Josh?
I noted on your mobile clinic summary that you received the one-time line item from the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, and it says including yearly expenses. Does that mean that, is there an end date? Is that here's yearly expenses for the next 10 years?
It's an end date, yes.
Okay.
It is for this year. We do not know what we will get at the next year.
Okay.
And the most of that line item went for the purchase of the vehicle.
Sure.
And then insuring the vehicle, of course. And every driver that we add to the vehicle adds increased cost in insurance. So we do not project that that money will cover the cost of the mobile unit to maintain it this year.
What do you anticipate as yearly expenses for next year without funding from the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare?
I don't have that information with
Okay.
me. I know just recently I paid the insurance cost and it was $1,700 with only one driver on it. And then we have a budget of $300 a month for gasoline. So that's a very rough estimate, and that's not including like any winterization. I'm just meeting with an RV company next week to help us come up with a maintenance binder that can go through to make sure that we know how to properly take care of the vehicle and keep it on a regular maintenance schedule. And we're still getting estimates for those costs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then we will look for Family Services Alliance.
Okay.
My name is Sarah O'Banion, and I'm the Director of Family Services Alliance. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Questions for Family Services? Linda?
Not a question, but just a comment, and then this applies to all of the nonprofits in our community, but you do such important work and make every dollar stretch. I mean, you do so much with so little, and it's just really, it's important, and it's just incredible to see everything, the people that you're able to help. So
Thank you.
I do appreciate that.
Thank you. And I appreciate that comment
applies
about
to all of you.
nonprofits in general. You know, when I came in, I felt like, gosh, I'm coming into a room of friends and coworkers and people that work together for our community.
And that is amazing to see. I mean, it's just the way that the nonprofits in this community work together in order to serve people in the best, most efficient way and most helpful way is really incredible to see. So do appreciate that.
Josh?
So I look at the number of service contacts that you've had with clients, and it is an incredible number. You do a lot at your clinics. What kind of staff do you have that are full-time and in terms of what their positions are? And then where do you receive the outside assistance from those who aren't your staff?
Sure. So let me make sure I answer all of those questions. So I was just working on a funding application yesterday, so I can tell you that it was asking me about my full-time equivalents and my part-time equivalents. So we have 7 full-time staff, and then we have 7 part-time staff. We have a variety, we have 3 teams. We have an administrative team, which of course is our smallest team. That includes me and then a financial person that works a lot of magic in our office. And then we have a team of advocates who respond on site. I did see the police chief that was here, and so, okay, just kidding, he is, sorry. It feels a little nervous up here, sorry. So our advocates do a lot of responding on site with law enforcement and supporting victims right in the moment. They spend a lot of time at the Bannock County Courthouse, assisting people with civil protection orders, thinking about emergency shelter, all the issues that we're talking about with all of the nonprofits. That's part of our partnership with one another to help people get connected to resources. And then finally, we have a counseling team, which is, I believe, vital. Not every program in the state of Idaho is able to have advocacy and counseling available. I believe that we have a responsibility to the people that we serve, that not only do we need to have crisis intervention and always be there, Christmas Eve, the 4th of July, we need to be there through the that crisis hotline. But we also have a responsibility to help people heal from the traumatic experiences that they endure, and then help people move forward and families heal and hopefully stop generational cycles. So what I find is that most of our advocates are full-time and most of our counselors are part-time. That's partly a financial issue, that most of our counselors have a full-time job outside of Family Services Alliance and do some paid volunteerism at Family Services Alliance. And so that's partly why we have a larger counseling team with more members who are working a reduced amount of hours.
So if I can ask a couple follow-ups real quick. So first one, your advocates, what are they by training? Variety, is there certain qualifications that you must have to be an advocate?
So our advocates have a variety of backgrounds in education. So we have a teacher who is employed by Family Services Alliance. We have a social worker. We have a person with a public health background. So people come from a variety of backgrounds. But in terms of their education, we focus on trauma training. We focus on crisis response. We focus on how people are affected by domestic and sexual violence, and how we can then employ our skills to help them work through those kinds of things. Counselors are licensed clinical counselors. Advocates have a little bit different backgrounds that are coming together, and then that training is a very important part of our process.
And then my last follow-up then, for things like legal advocacy, for example, where do you get your resources? Who are you working with for legal advocacy?
Sure, that's a great question. So we have a grant that we partner with Bannock County, and there's a variety of partners there that are. It's called the Bannock County Domestic Violence Court Oversight Team, and we're a part of that. We partner with Idaho Legal Aid, and so Idaho Legal Aid is able to provide legal advice. We are very clear that we do not provide legal advice. However, we do spend time helping people understand the legal process. So what I often say to people is, if you speak French and you go into a courtroom, they often speak Spanish. So we don't often understand the language that people are using, whether you're going to a medical clinic, whether you're going to a legal setting. And so our advocates are able to help people sort of translate that language that's being used. They can help them prepare in terms of victim witness statements, in terms of civil protection orders. What does a judge need to know? What does a judge not need to know? How do I prepare for a court hearing? What do I wear to a court hearing? Is my offender going to be in the room? And if so, how can I process what's about to happen to me?
Thank you.
So we'll just go down the line. Roger, Claudia, and then Chris.
Okay, I noticed on the first page, it's last year's thing, or it was, well, excuse me, it is this year's, but you have the amount of funds requested, $16,500, amount previously funded, $17,500. And then when I go to the bottom, it says something like, we need at least $17,500.
So I apologize. That is a mistake on my part. That is a mistake on my part. We are actually asking for $17,500. We were funded $16,500 last year. So in probably the last 5 to 6 years, we've been funded by the city of Pocatello $17,500. Last year, we spent a lot of time kind of talking about the concerns that the city has and the concerns that all governmental and local businesses and nonprofits are experiencing. And so I apologize. That's actually a mistake on my part. It should actually say amount previously funded was $16,500, and we're requesting $17,500, which is again kind of our standard gift from the city. That's a mistake on my part.
No, I would just say that all the nonprofits that we are talking about today are service providers essential to our community. But some of them really stick up as services that are important for our staff too. And when we have police that get into a domestic violence situation, your facility is one of the few we can go to in that situation. And you have the expertise where we don't have to have that expertise in our officers. And that, I think that's a real important distinction, is that the transfer of responsibility saves us some money.
And I appreciate, and I often say I'm married to a law enforcement officer, and one of the things that I appreciate is that law enforcement officers can do their jobs really well. That's not the same as what an advocate or a counselor does. I don't have to know how to be a law enforcement officer. I don't have to know how to be a medical provider. I just need to know how to partner with them.
They just need to
that
de-escalate
work.
the situation rather than get into all the treatment programs because, I just think that's one of, there's a few places like that where it really dovetails with what we do as a city, and it alleviates a burden on the city by having you available.
Yeah. And one thing I really appreciate is that we're also able to work with our law enforcement officers when there's a suicide or a homicide. And I think that really has made a difference in our community in terms of supporting folks after tragedies like that.
When you mentioned your legal providers, do you guys use CASA at all?
So CASA is an organization that would specifically be, and I don't want to speak for them, but my understanding after working with child welfare and CASA programs is that they are court appointed for an open child protection case. So we often have CASA workers who are following up with clients or kiddos who are enrolled in services. They might be in play therapy at our program. We don't necessarily, I'm not under the impression that CASA can provide legal advice. They often have guardian ad litems who are doing that, but we absolutely would partner with Jared and his team in terms of supporting kiddos through those systems that they're being that they're a part of. In terms of pure legal advice around divorce, custody, civil protection orders, we often partner with the Idaho Volunteer Lawyer Program or Idaho Legal Aid.
Claudia?
When I look at your numbers from January to December 31 of last year, I'm just wondering, where do you think you're going to be on this track, or are you seeing an increase in need, with inflation and money stressors? That always leads to,
It absolutely
and then of
does.
course you have the whole drug situation. And so anyway, I'm just wondering if you're looking at these numbers from last year and you think you're on a par, or?
So we saw a pretty significant increase from 2020 to 2021. We believe that was related, to pandemic-related issues. We also know that violence happens whether or not we're involved, right? And so we actually appreciate when people reach out to us because we know that violence is happening. So we want to intervene as much as possible. I do believe that our services will continue to come up. What I've seen over the past 15 years being at Family Services Alliance is that as we get better at doing our work and as we get better at sort of assessment and helping clients understand, and we understand trauma better, people need more intervention. So we do wraparound services as opposed to the days of only providing one service. So we're going to get you a civil protection order and you're safe. That's not really true, right? You're safe for that moment, but let's talk about what else we can do, like free counseling. Let's talk about play therapy. Let's talk about your housing security, food insecurity, all of those things. And so in some ways, I would argue that we're doing a better job than we were 15 years ago.
Well, I just want to say that there was a time many years ago when I was in a situation where I would have loved to have had access to services like this for me and my little boy.
Thank you for sharing that.
So I can't express enough how vital it is.
Yeah.
The service you provide.
And when you share that, you are a survivor, and there are survivors in this room. We know how common violence is. We know how common domestic and sexual violence is. You are in a room of survivors.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah. So are your numbers vis-à-vis clients, unique clients?
They are.
Or, because I remember when we talked about the difference. So thank you for that. I
Yeah, so
appreciate-
just to clarify.
As opposed to touches.
Yes, so services are touches, are interventions on a one-time basis that we provide to people, but we do provide a unique I'd like to provide a unique number of clients to you. However, what you are touching on is that many of the people that we serve have a variety of trauma histories. We talk about it like an onion. So there's layers and layers sometimes upon trauma. And so someone who experienced child abuse, they often then are exposed to domestic violence later in their life. That's part of why we provide play therapy. That's part of why we provide attachment work, part of why we provide trauma-informed parenting, so that we can help people stop those cycles of abuse.
And then this is really more of a comment, and again, to make sure that I'm thinking down a trail that's reasonable. Frequently, having worked in schools for many years, frequently folks that aren't directly involved with people who are struggling with various situations assume that people who are in domestic violence situations or housing situations or whatever are there basically because they didn't get their act together and do
There's a
what
lot
they
of
should
judgment
do.
that
There's a
comes
lot
with
of
that.
judgment. And I wonder if, I probably should have asked the same question or made the same observation relative to the other organizations, but perhaps you could speak to that for just a moment, that we're not talking about the well-to-do members of a community basically paying to help, through their taxes, paying to help people who just don't get their act together.
Councilmember Ortega just
Right.
acknowledged that she's a
Right.
survivor, and you're in a leadership position in our community. There is a lot of guilt and shame that comes with being a victim of violence or a victim of abuse. However, I also believe that's part of the power and control process, and I don't just believe that. I've learned that, right, throughout trauma training. Offenders want their victims to feel like less, to feel like they are not valued in this room. They are not valued in their community. They are not valued by services, it doesn't matter if they're here or not here. And so as offenders do that work to control their victims and hurt them, then it's our responsibility as a community to come in and send other messages, and that's part of a donation like this, participating in fundraising efforts, going and volunteering, helping with Meals on Wheels, those kinds of things. You all send a message to our citizens that all of us matter and we all matter equally.
And my final, again, more of a comment, kind of along the lines of Roger's comment, is not to diminish in any way, because the human beings are the most important factor in what you do. But we've also had a lot of conversations recently about economic development and what creates, we're competing with communities across the country to bring new businesses and new jobs.
Right.
And it's kind of one of those vicious circles, because if homelessness increases, if the social stressors therefore increase, if crime, if drugs therefore increase, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we are also working against ourselves in terms of creating a community that projects an image, number one, as a caring community, but also just simply on the surface. Having homeless encampments because we aren't willing to step up and help our homeless people, having people sleeping on the streets. So I think, quite apart from the incredibly important human aspect, I think we sometimes don't think about that all these issues also dovetail into other more business-oriented aspects of us as a total community.
Sure, and I don't have the numbers to support this, but I know that there is research out there that kind of talks about the cost of domestic and sexual violence to employers in general. You know, when people are missing work or people are injured or are traumatized and aren't able to do their job as well as they're capable of, we certainly know there's a business cost to that.
Linda?
I just want to reiterate, and I think you said this, but it's just so important to understand that, I mean, violence doesn't recognize like socioeconomic
Exactly.
level or, you know, class or anything like that. It can happen to anyone in any situation, whether you're a person of means or not a person of means.
Exactly.
And, so it's so important. It is definitely, as you said, not, you know, wealthy people helping, you know, other poorer people who couldn't get their act
Exactly.
together. This is anybody at any, you know, socioeconomic
Exactly.
level. So that it's just really important. And as you say, it just has this bigger impact on the entire community. So,
Right. And reducing
businesses
barriers
included.
is economic related, but there are other barriers that
Right.
we have to address too.
Right.
And part of that is guilt and shame. If you are someone who is in law enforcement and you're experiencing abuse,
Right.
it's pretty difficult to come in for help during that experience.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yep, Senior Activity Center.
Hi, I'm Pam Landon, and I am on the Board of Directors for the Senior Activity Center. First of all, I'd like to thank Mayor Bladd and the council members for their support over the years and hopefully their continued support. And I'm open for any questions if you have any.
Questions for Josh?
Are there any activities or what process do you go about? I think something that's really important when you talk about the group of folks that you work for, especially the low or moderate income seniors, is that there oftentimes is not much interaction between these folks and then the broader community. What kind of events do the Senior Center offer to try and encourage that kind of community participation, making it a community center designed around, you know, inviting that kind of social interaction, maybe with those who don't fit into that age group?
Right.
So our major focus is the Nutritional Program.
Okay.
We serve a lot, well, we've served a lot of meals over the pandemic, which we were able to maintain serving meals through curbside service. So we do provide meals Tuesday through Thursday, and a lot of our members that do come in right now it's the only meal they receive, and it's also the only time they get out of their house. It's also the only time that they get to socialize. So currently our activities are, you know, we have bridge and pinochle, so there's some card games going on hand and foot. We have different kinds of wellness activities, exercise. We have Zumba, Fit and Fall, Tai Chi. We're trying to add to that all the time. And we have a billiard room, we have table tennis. So we have a lot of those activities that anyone that's over 60 is more than welcome to come. We've also partnered with New Knowledge Adventures and the United Seniors Project. So we're trying to focus a lot of our energy on bringing in the boomers, the newer retirees, to make it a place that they can come and feel welcome and enjoy what we have to offer. We're also trying to offer new activities as we see, you know, as we can fit them into our building and schedule them. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I was actually
Claudia?
really impressed with the list of activities and stuff that you put in the packet. I thought really you just kind of more focused on the meals and maybe you could just go there and hang out, but it's pretty impressive because I was a hygienist for many years and I had a lot of, I always called them two types of seniors, the kind that were socially active, even if they had physical or health limitations, and then the kind that are just kind of waiting for the box. And the quality of life is exponentially different when people can be social. So even if you're have mobility issues, if you can get to and play bridge with your friends and socialize, it makes a tremendous, tremendous difference in the quality of life of those people, as I'm sure you know from being there. But I was really impressed with this list of activities. It was a lot more than I anticipated seeing.
Thank you. And luckily, we're almost back to full capacity in offering all of those things. Another thing that we do offer is we've partnered with the Pocatello Parkinson's Support Group. We have an area within the center that they have provided the equipment for. It's a form of rock steady boxing, which is very beneficial for persons with Parkinson's. And we've included them in our center, and we've partnered with them, and we are actually finding recently that the word of that group being at the senior center has gotten out, and we actually are having other members that are not have not been diagnosed with Parkinson's want to attend some of their boxing sessions, because it's a great thing for just balance. And as we know, as we get older, our balance kind of goes out the window. So there's just a lot of great partnerships that we have, and I hope to improve that over time, or we do as a center.
It's a pretty innovative program. I mean, one of the greatest boxing coaches ever, Freddie Roach, when, he has this horrendous tremor from his Parkinson's, but when he holds mitts, you can't tell that he's, because of the way it engages the brain differently and stuff. So that's really innovative that they've brought that and that you've made space for them.
Yeah, I'd like to provide more space. So maybe through the years, if we can get a new facility by working with these other, the United Seniors Project and New Knowledge Adventures, if we could get a different facility that could incorporate more of that. It's a very successful program. I learned about it through my neighbor. She was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I attended several of their meetings. And the story that one of the gentlemen brought to me was there's a Apple Athletics in Idaho Falls has a rock steady boxing program. They're fully certified and everything. And I don't know if it's still true because I haven't been in touch with him for a while, but the person that was running those classes was actually in a wheelchair from Parkinson's. And he now is leading the classes and walks. And I mean, it's just, I get goosebumps when I think about that, of how much that activity can help one person. So, it's just a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Neat. Other questions? Roger?
One of the things that I think in transition, at least, is the fact that you're doing the meals inside, but you had such success with the meals that you had drive-up services for. And that may have opened a huge door of opportunity here in town. Could you speak to that just a minute?
I can. Sorry, I get a little emotional. I mean, I'm not sorry because it's my passion, but during the pandemic, our meal service went from an average of 1,000 to 1,200 meals a month of in dining service to 3,000 meals a month. And it's always heart-wrenching to me when we do those, because you see people that walk up that are homeless to get a meal. You see people that live in their car come in and get a meal. We had a lady that went through to pick up a meal, and it was a weekend, so we actually gave her 3 meals because she lived in her car. And she dug around in her console in her car, and it was an older, beat up, wasn't sure she was going to make it out of the parking lot kind of a car, but she dug around in her console and found 3 pennies because she wanted to donate to what we do. That curbside service ends the 31st of May, and I wish we could carry it on, even though it's been a great trial for us to prepare 200 meals a day for curbside service, or 150 to 200, but I'm hopeful that some of those people will now be able to come in. Some of them, we've done a couple of surveys, and they're not they don't want to for several reasons. Some of them, it's all they can do to get in their car to drive there to get the meal and get out of their car when they get home. Some of them are just, they're just not comfortable, and I think that's a self-image that they have, which we don't see at the center. Everybody's the same at the center. Some of them, they catch a ride to get there and have to come back. So some of them are just not comfortable yet coming in because of the pandemic. They just still are in there, they just don't want to have that interaction on a larger scale. So I think also that the curbside meals, for some of our members that came in, it was the only outside communication that they had, because the people that we had doing the curbside, which one is a paid employee, the other was a volunteer, they talk to each one of those people as they hand them a meal and ask them how they are doing. Oh, because it's been so long, they know most of them by name, so they call them by name, and they ask them how they're doing and if they need anything and if we can help them in some way. And so that one-on-one communication, I think, is extremely important for our members. Did I answer your
Yeah,
question?
and your new facility that you're hopeful about.
Dreaming of.
Yeah, dreaming of. Do you anticipate, I think I saw something that acted like you might have a drive-up window, so that this could be something that could happen?
And, right now we're kind of, there is it's a good thought. There's a lot of things that have to happen in order for us to be able to provide those meals. We were able to do the curbside meals because of the reimbursement that we got through the federal fundings, through the pandemic. Those end, and according to the rules that I'm aware of, we can't do that unless we pay for it completely.
Okay. I have to admit, I got one of the meals because I was walking from my office to Les Schwab and walked by and knew the people who were distributing, and it was the end of their thing, so they kindly asked me to take one away so that they wouldn't have to take it back in.
Yes. We are fairly generous at the senior center. I mean, we would rather give people an extra meal than to have it go to waste. So, and the meals are really good. I just have to say, they are really good, nutritious meals.
They are.
Super, okay. Other questions? Chris?
Yeah, so as you're heading toward realizing the dream of a new facility, I mean, obviously, for many funders, statistics are important. And so I'm just wondering, with everything else that you're doing and realizing that it's a volunteer board and all of those things, I'm just wondering if you're being able to begin to gather the kinds of statistics and service numbers, et cetera, that are going to really support you in writing strong funding applications.
Yes, thank you for that question. So I also serve on the United Seniors Project Board, and we're working very closely with them. Several of the agencies are working with, senior agencies are working with together. And we do have statistics from the Senior Center, New Knowledge Adventures, Snake River New Horizon Band. I'm sure there's a couple more that I'm missing. So we do have those figures, and we're currently working on a business plan with the narratives that go with the business plan for that project.
And then could you help me understand, because I helped a member of the community this past year, first by picking up meals to get to him, and then getting him connected with SECA. And having never done that for myself, it took a bit to kind of figure out who to call for what and what to do if a call wasn't returned, et cetera, et cetera. So can you help me understand the connection between the meals that you do and the meals that CDBG does, both in terms of the origin of the meals, but also funding-wise? I mean, is it completely separate? Is it intermingled? Can you just help me understand that?
And my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, we operate completely separately.
Okay,
Our meals are all served within the facility, other than the curbside, but normally they're
Right.
just filled, we just provide meals for dining in. The Meals on Wheels are the ones that are delivered out.
Okay.
I think years ago, I think the senior center did do some home deliveries.
Prepared the meals.
Yeah.
maybe that's where my confusion is coming from, because seemed as though I remembered.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
There is a slight crossover in funding from area agents
Right.
and aging, so they have two kind of buckets.
Yeah.
There's the congregate meals, which is the senior center, and the home delivery meals. So they
Okay.
get federal funds to
Okay.
serve both of those target audiences.
okay. I think I'm just remembering
Yeah.
past history.
And we do prepare all of our meals in our own, we have a commercial kitchen at the
Right.
senior center. And so all of our meals are prepared there.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that the barrier to continuing curbside meals, which may have contributed to serving more than twice as many people, seem to be financial. Do you happen to have any idea, or could you get me a number? What would it cost for you to continue the curbside service?
I could work up a number for you.
Okay, I think that would be very helpful, because if we're serving more than twice as many people, depending on what that number is, and we can do it for, $1.50, $2 a person, that may be something that council could consider.
And I think that would be great. I've fought against ending the curbside just because I think of the number of people that we serve. In a 7-month period, we serve 34,000 meals.
Right,
That's a lot.
that's a lot of meals.
That's a lot of meals,
Right.
and it worried me, and I kept being told they'll just go someplace else.
Where?
Okay, and I get these other nonprofits that help provide meals, but what does that do to them?
Right.
And I
If
mean, it's still just
600 is a
very,
stretch for you,
Right.
and we're talking about the
Right.
potential of additional 12, 1,400, I mean, that's not going to fly.
and it's not just financial. That's one of the biggest barriers.
Right.
We've been operating pretty well out a side door of our
Right,
facility,
right.
and you go through a drive.
As having an
through alleyway.
appropriate setup.
Our staff that works and does that, I mean, they're out there in rain, snow, hail, sun. It's worn on them,
Yeah.
and they're kind of ready for that to be
Over.
So I think it not only addresses the financial end of it, but also maybe the ability to hire someone and create, we've had Councilman Cheatham and the city engineers come and look at the facility to see if there was some way we could modify it a little bit to protect the employees that are doing the service. And it's kind of just not feasible. Rules, regulations, codes, all of that. So it would take a little bit more, I think, than the financial would help immensely, but it's also put a big burden on our cook staff, our kitchen staff.
Right.
So I think it could still be done. I just think there needs to be some brainstorming that would go on, not with just us.
Right.
But, our building is a city building, so again, with the city, and maybe some other nonprofit entities that we could pull together and come up with a, because it really showed me personally, there is a huge need in the county.
Have you ever requested any funds from CDBG?
We have. We get, I believe we've gotten, they're in all these reports. We get some funding. I don't know if we've gotten any.
Looks like I'm looking at the CDBG matching funds 2022, $10,000.
Right, and I believe that was,
So they gave Big Mama's house 50.
I can't even remember what that is. I'm really sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just asking the question. I must have missed that line in your in your packet, but I was just asking if you'd gotten any funds from CDBG.
We do apply for it.
Okay.
You were in the applications last year.
Yeah, and, we're really happy for Aid for Friends, but I know a good share of those funds were connected with Aid for Friends and needed. So we try really hard to reach out for all of the different grants that we can, but, grants are hit and miss. And so your funds that you donate to us are really beneficial in helping run or help with the overall operations of the senior center. Just if we used it for utilities.
Do you have somebody who writes your grants for you, or
We
is
do.
that
It's
something
Anita
that you do
Valadolid.
yourselves?
She's our director.
Okay.
Our executive director. And she writes them. She's very good at it. One thing that COVID did do for us is it gave her enough free time. She'd go into the office, even though the center wasn't open, she'd go into the office and she was able to spend a lot of time writing grants and finding grants. So we apply for a lot of grants every year. And sometimes we're lucky, sometimes we're not.
Chris?
Yeah, has there been, and this is really a composite question to a composite crew, has there been any discussion about a grant writer who basically serves all or a number of the nonprofit agencies, about whether or not there'd be any way to pool funds so that a professional would be writing for everyone? I mean, as he or she was going through what's available, would be looking, I'm sure it's not rocket science. I'm sure you've probably thought of it. I don't know what the barriers might be.
I don't know that I can answer that question specifically, because I see one potential challenge being, I know the programming that we have at Family Services Alliance that would be different than Seeker Aid for Friends. However, City of Pocatello and United Way have worked to provide grant writing workshops, and I found that very helpful, and I see that in the future. Being a program person who kind of grew up in services and then transitioned to a leadership position, it's certainly been a learning opportunity. I made a mistake, right, on my application. So I've appreciated those grant writing opportunities that City of Pocatello has provided to us. I can't actually answer your question about whether we've talked about, but I do see us sort of all united under United Way.
And we have some contacts that I'm sure are available. Kathleen Lewis is one of them that's willing to help with some of the organizations. I mean, I know that she would help us if we ask her. I know she'll help with United Seniors Project. I think it's a great idea if even those entities that function similarly could get together and pool the funds for that. I also understand that ISU has a program that you can submit to that will, as part of their project, they go out and look at specific grants that are that would be useful for you, and then they give you a binder at the end of that time that has that information in it.
They did that for Arts Council.
Yeah. So there's some opportunities out there. I just.
Thank
Rick.
you.
David Doran reached out to me recently. He's executive director of CCOG, and they have some grant writers within CCOG, and they are doing some of this now, reaching out to organizations to see if they can help in areas that they see that need that kind of help. So I think that's available. The big problem that I've seen in working with some of these organizations over the years is trying to identify an appropriate grant to write an application to.
Right.
That's been the big struggle.
Right.
Like the new building program. Everybody wants to support a program, but nobody wants to build a building.
Sure.
And it's a struggle
Yeah.
sometimes to find funds you can simply apply to.
Right.
It is.
And that's really what I was thinking about, because you're absolutely right, having been in that world for a number of years, that just knowing what's out there. And of course, there's the foundation directory and everything, but I mean, if it's printed, it's like this. And that's really where my head was going, that, if there were a person who were looking in the kind of social services arena, but were looking, with a broad radar, as opposed to actually being the person who puts pen to paper. Because that's the easy part. Once you've identified a good match, so anyway, that's really kind of what my question was going to, because, I mean, the number of grants that go unapplied to, or are under-applied to, and therefore given to organizations that may not be primo organizations, is mind-boggling. When you look at the research, it's mind-boggling how much money is left on the table.
I just wanted to add real quick too, I think that the challenge I think that the idea is exceptional and our community would benefit from something like that. But what we see in our world is that you can apply for their money, but you can't pay staff time out of their money.
Right, no.
I think the idea would have to be kind of self-funded or, private,
Right.
unrestricted, what we would
Right.
call it, so that there is the financial gains to
Right.
continue.
Well,
on
that's
that
where I
path.
think about, about city money. Because, for example, applying money from the city to aspects of a nonprofit organization that cannot be funded typically, or will not be funded typically, by other kinds of entities, then creates a whole series of opportunities. Because it's essentially, it allows you to function, and then that becomes your springboard.
Yeah.
Because, as I say, having been in that world for many years, I mean, trust me, I get it.
We're going to give you all this money, but we're not going to pay you to get it.
I get it. I guess I do all your wonderful work, but oh, by the way, you can't pay any people.
Yeah.
You can't pay the rent. You can't, and it's
It
a
is.
terrible.
But I think
catch-22.
what Sarah mentioned with United Way, the partnership between United Way and the city of, I mean, that's a solid foundation to the educational component of it.
Well, and
What are the things?
that might be something United Way, because they get so many private donations. They might be able to assist other local nonprofits by being hey, here are some things that maybe fit your profile. Again, I don't know. I'm sure other people have thought of this, but being in that world, that takes so much time, just identifying your possibilities.
And let's be real, nonprofits don't have the capacity to have a dedicated grants writer anymore. I
Exactly.
once was the dedicated grants
Right.
writer for SECA, but as federal funds and things
Right.
diminish over time, it's
Right.
the grants writer, the
Right.
HR person.
So
that,
you end
all
up
these
going to
things.
you have your 5 go-tos, and you go to, and then, of course, you get to the situation where they get tired of seeing the same people, and they want, because they don't want to become anybody to become reliant on them. And it's just full of catch-22s.
It is.
BJ, you look like you're ready to jump out of your chair and add to the conversation.
There's always that, okay,
Come on up,
hi, I'm BJ with Aid for Friends. It's also very important, while you see so many grants out there and you think there's all this money, why aren't people getting it? It's not good to go after money before you have the project.
Right.
If you put the cart
yeah.
before the horse, that funding is going to be a nightmare to you. You're going to get a program that you can't sustain.
Right.
So it's really, while it is very difficult and time consuming, and those go-to ones are the ones that usually fit.
Yeah.
That want to support that particular area of service or passion. Okay. So it does look like a lot of money out there. Be careful how you go find it.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Linda.
And I just wanted
Why-
to add to this discussion coming from academia. It's a similar situation, and when you have, like, for example, at ISU, you have an office of research, and they have grant writers, and they have people that look for grants and everything, and then you have all the departments, and you have all the faculty and everything. But the grant writers in the Office of Research, they can help you, but they don't have the expertise to be able to write grants for all those different people. So, like the professor is going to have to write a grant, to support the research they're doing, because they're the only ones that have the expertise to write the grant. The Office of Research, you work with them and they come in handy in terms of maybe identifying. But even there's limits on what they can identify, because if they don't fully understand your research, they don't. I mean, I had this experience myself where they identified things for me to apply for that actually were totally unrelated to what I do, but they didn't understand what I do enough to know that. So I think, collaboration is always good, and maybe having, some help with identifying things could be useful. I think there are limits to that, because you all know, the intricacies of what you do, and would be able to write the best application. And as you say, even know when to go after money and who to go after, what sources to go after. Nobody knows that better than each of you in these different organizations. So I think there's, maybe some benefit to that, but also there's limits and challenges to that idea too, so.
Yeah, it depends. I was lucky. I was in a situation where somebody pointed me, when I was in that world and writing grants, pointed me toward an organization that was very close to where my organization was located that I was completely unaware of. It just had not shown up on any radar, and I'd been looking, and somebody pointed me in that direction, and I wrote a grant, and I had a 5-year revenue stream to do some really important things. So you're right. It depends on the situation, but in that particular instance, somebody who was working with other related organizations said, hey, this isn't us, but this sounds like you. So.
Okay, any other questions? Super, thank you very much.
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to again thank you and the council members for helping to support the senior center and all of the nonprofits. We are not asking for an increase in our request this year, so we're trying to maintain as well as we can with the inflation that's hitting us. So I just want to thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Aid for Friends. That's why I told you to stay.
Well, good morning. My name's BJ Stensland. I'm the Executive Director at Aid for Friends. And I also want to thank all of you for your time looking over the nonprofit request for funding from the city of Pocatello. I can't tell you how proud I am sitting in the back seat listening to my partners and the work that we do in this community. We work so well, and we do have a very unique environment with our partnerships and nonprofits, because we, in the state, we're known for being collaborative. Anyway, I just had to tell you how proud I am of every one of you. Okay. Any questions? Ditto. No? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
So we've got
You
Josh.
guys have come up with some hard questions.
We've got Josh and then Roger.
Okay.
So your usage statistics for the past 2 years indicate that the shelter was used at an 80% utilization rate in 2020 and then declined to a 72% utilization rate in 2021. I don't anticipate that homelessness is something that just went away or is going away. Maybe that's the case, and please tell me if I'm wrong. What is the barriers to getting that to a 100% utilization rate?
I hope we don't have to. I hope we always have more beds than we have people that need it. That's what that utilization rate means. When it was 72%, that was last year when it was COVID. Mm-hmm. And we made the decision not to continue using the old shelter that was pretty tight and condensed because of congregate living and COVID. the threat of having an outbreak there. So we went to hotel stays. And so that's why that number was lowered. We will be experiencing, I hope, lower numbers in the couple of years from now, next couple of years, because we've now reached a higher capacity at the new shelter, doubling, tripling what we had before. So I don't want to see 80%. It's not, you've got to be careful with statistics too. That tells me that we're at such a capacity, we need to go work on what's next. And that's what those numbers showed. And now we have a new facility to address that. So I'm hoping we're down to 45.
Roger, and then Claudia.
I just thought of something after the last discussion. Years ago, we submitted grants to HUD, and it was your predecessor with, and some of those were kicked aside even though it was our community's priority system. And we were able to protest because of advocacy. They funded our number 3 thing instead of our number 1 and number 2 things. Okay. And we because it went through Boise knew better than Pocatello what we needed to do. Advocacy allowed us to jump over Boise and go to Portland, and we got all 3 things funded. So there's an advocacy part of granting that's an important aspect too, is when you know it and you follow through with it. And I think that's part of what we need to be aware of, is what you might be trying to do so we know what place our advocacy goes. That was something I didn't intend to say. Where are you on your Cdbg cycle for your facility? Are you in year 2, 3?
3.
Year 3.
Year 3.
Good answer.
Good answer. Thank you there, Claudia. Yeah.
So you got 2 more years to go.
I think
This is the 3rd year, so
you got
after
5
this
years.
year, there will be
Yeah.
2 more.
Okay.
Okay, so, and is it the calendar year? Well, Cdbg is always late, so who knows?
Yeah, they just got, because they just got their money 2 weeks ago.
I think they got their money 2 weeks ago, but that money's for
last year.
2020 or
Yeah,
something
it-
like that. It's
Yeah, it's
CDBG's a moving
and
target.
I can tell you that Cdbg used to get funded way earlier for the year.
Yeah.
And I know that some of the grants or the opportunities for other funds would come out within months of the federal government's operational year. Now they're delayed by a year. So you guys have been the victims of that lethargy at the government level, federal government level. So, one of the things that's going to be happening here, because we're getting squeezed unnaturally compared to some communities. We know about inflation, we know about gas prices, but we also have a huge housing crisis here in Pocatello. And, we're going to have to figure out, you're asking for the same thing you've been asking, I think it's 8 years. Is that what I saw in here? Somewhere we're going to have to figure out that it costs more to do the business that we thought we were doing.
Right.
Because 8 years of it, it'd almost be a $10,000 commitment instead of an $8,000 now with inflation, and that's not including where we are headed. So, what do you see as some of the challenges that you have to take care of people and to get finances for your facility, your operation?
Thank you. I'm going to do a little brief discussion on the Cdbg money because that was brought up. That was for the acquisition of the property that we now have for the new shelter, which as a community, we knew we needed more capacity. So that is one channel of funding. It was determined to be repaid in separate years, so it wouldn't be such a burden on our community to support the facility altogether. So I thought it was a very, very well-designed way to help assist with that shelter. But that was separate money. And now it was approved and set aside. I think it's a great way to utilize. CDBG is for the blight of neighborhoods or for housing issues and for shelters. And it can be used in a variety of ways that have the biggest impact on our community. Okay. The challenges that we have, we are going to experience more operational expenses. It makes sense. The building's twice the size. We've had to increase our staffing. We have to have more meals prepared. We need to have case management. There's all kinds of additional things that we're offering with this new facility that we're finally able to offer. So we're seeing that. I'm seeing right now, of course, this is May, June timeframe. We're not seeing we had 34 people at the shelter last Monday or whatever it was. So we're still seeing steady, but not jumping up. What I'm concerned about with the lack of affordable housing in our community is that we do everything we can to help prepare people to be self-sufficient, to work through obstacles that they're facing, what factors played into why they came to the shelter, and get employment if they can, get secured income. And we do all of that, and yet we're still not seeing them successfully transition because the housing market is sky high. The rates are astronomical, and it's really excluded the low-income households from ever having the ability to get and secure housing. So my challenge is not just looking and seeing what we're going to be able to pay for with operations. My challenge is how can we best use other funding to help people move into apartments and permanent housing. Was that a long answer for a short question? Oh, wow.
It's the answer you needed to provide.
Yeah.
Claudia.
I have a question on your presentation. Under shelter parameters, there's a line. Yes.
Okay. Yes.
There's a line, yes, Vanna. There's a line that says HUD requires 24 hours out of incarceration before eligible for shelter services.
Yep.
That doesn't mean you have to have been incarcerated, just that you have to have been released more than 24 hours ago. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. I just don't want people to have to shoplift in order to get services. No. Okay.
That's a really good point. Thank you. I'll adjust that line so it's not implying that. Well, the reason it was put in there is the community felt, why does Aid for Friends require people that come out of jail not to immediately go into the shelter? And it was a way to make a statement. It's not an Aid for Friends decision.
It's a HUD thing.
And the reason HUD did it is that it did not want the channel from the Department of Corrections to go into our community shelters as the option. So they wanted that 24 hours. I'll reword that.
No, I just wanted, you don't have to. I just wanted to clarify. I thought, holy cow, if people have to go shoplift and then go to the slammer and then get out and wait 24 hours to go to the shelter, holy cow, that's quite the process. So, okay.
The purpose was to clarify that it really wasn't something we created as a rule, but it's something we abide by.
Is the heat on in here?
Super. Any other, Chris?
Yeah, before my time on council, I believe the city had made, and Roger, you'd be able to probably clue me in on this, made like a multi-year, even though we can't engage in multi-year budgets, we made some kind of a commitment to help get the facility up and running? That's my understanding, that it was like $50,000
Yep.
for
CDBG
some number of
money.
years?
It was a commitment of our CDBG money into the future, the CDBG.
Oh,
It wasn't the
was
taxpayer
via-
dollars local, it was the.
All right.
It was
via.
a promise rather than a contract.
All right.
And it was only to, and it's only to buy, like, it only
Right.
acquires every year a 1% ownership in the facility, so it's a very gradual
Right.
thing.
So the reason I'm asking is that I'm just wondering if something, I'm just thinking about the senior center and thinking whether if that worked in one instance and seemed to be viable and well thought out, that might be something along those lines might be useful in this other situation. That's
And I would have to defer that to a CDBG.
right. Right. I just
committee to
didn't
look
know
at
where
that.
this was.
That's a whole different set of
Yeah,
funding.
yeah.
If
That's
I
fine, I
remember
just-
right, we needed to make a commitment to secure a much larger loan, which could become a grant, so to speak, that you don't have to pay back to the Housing Authority of Idaho, was that it?
Idaho Housing and Finance Association.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we made the commitment that, which helped them have, it provided a match so they could get the grant.
Right.
It was a
Yeah.
phenomenal
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah,
And
it just happened before my time, but I had vague details and just, I mean, again, not rocket science, I'm sure you folks are looking at it, but it just occurred to me.
No, it was rocket science.
Claudia, it felt like it.
I just have a collective comment for all of you, I'll say ladies in this situation, gentlemen, is that
Battle on this.
is that you're essentially asking for the same amount of money that you've been asking for, but none of us is blind to what's going on in the economy with inflation and inflation plus the cost of fuel, because to me, those are two separate things, right? And I just want to say that CDBG came in at 7% less than what they expected, so they had to adjust Christine had to adjust across the board. And so I'm just trying to figure out, like, realistically, do you really think you can do what you're doing with less in a time of more cost? I guess I'm just verbalizing a thought. I just think you guys are going to need more money.
Okay, and we'd love some more money. We're not
You're not going to say no?
against that at all. I'm not speaking for all of us because I don't know what's in your heads. I know that for me, because of last year, we were asked to look at a decrease. So why would I come in this year knowing last year's approach was 2%? How are you going to handle taking less? I didn't want to come in. I'm going to give it a year, and next year I'll probably have a better idea of how much more I need. Because you're right, things are costing more. We don't have that ability to completely project what future costs are, what's going to happen with the recession. But that's, from my point of view, I didn't want to go in and ask for more when my approach last year was, how do you handle less?
Well, and
Is that what you guys felt?
and as I recall,
How about you?
Yeah, and with us, our curbside actually caused a deficit.
Yeah. And as I
Yeah.
recall,
Money is
we made that decision within the context of asking 2% also from departments. Then we didn't ask 2% from departments, but we also declined to restore the 2% to nonprofits. It
Right,
was
but for-
kind of how
from
internally how that played out.
My approach coming today
Right.
was, I was hoping to just keep status quo.
Right.
And yeah, we're going to have to look for other funding
Right.
opportunities wherever we can. But you're right, Claudia, it's costing more, and we all know that.
Right.
I think I would just add to that too, as community partners and, the collective community, the mindfulness of, everybody's stretched thin and things need to go otherwhere. So from our position, it comes in of, what can we do in our own walls to kind of leverage these other things?
Sure.
Because we want to be sensitive and mindful of the stressors that, are coming from across the board.
Super, thank you. I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much.
Sure.
We will move to Greater Pocatello Convention and Visitors Bureau.
All right. Very different than the other organizations. My name is Jeff Glissendorf. Good morning, Council. I am currently the Chair of Visit Pocatello, as well as our Idaho Travel Council rep for this region.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Josh?
Can you estimate or provide numbers, two parts to my question. So first, can you estimate or provide numbers for non-resident spending for Pocatello for previous years, whether it be 2021, 2020?
I have tax reports in front of me that show the taxes collected overall in hotels.
Okay.
From the year of 2015 till current.
So that report, is that kind of your, I guess your gauge for out of town spending?
Yes, and that's what our grant is based on as well, is a 2% occupancy tax collected by the state. And out of that general fund it is taken, and 50% goes to the state for operation.
Okay.
And 50% of that tax goes back to each area's entity.
So can you just give me the number on tax collected for, let's say, 2020?
For 2020?
Do you have that available? Was that in the range you gave me?
I do. In our region, in 2020, it was $826,000.
Okay. And can you then estimate from that number things like projected food spend, tourism spend, those things? Do you use that as kind of a benchmark, or how does that function?
I can provide more data. I probably didn't provide you enough, but there are so many consortiums and statistics out there. It's not even funny.
Okay.
I have a Domo site that gives data, but where everybody's coming from, what the spending is. But per family right now, it's went from about $275 per day up to about $400 per day in spending when somebody comes into your region.
I don't know if I speak for everyone on council. I'd love to see some of those more figures and statistics if you could provide those.
Absolutely.
Just email them. I don't know if anyone else, where would you email?
Email me and I'll get it to them.
Perfect. So my follow-up question then is, what would you anticipate as, let's just say, a projected percentage increase for 2023 spending if you were given this amount for a full-time staff member to manage marketing efforts and representation? Can you make that kind of an estimation?
The last 5 years have been very unpredictable. In general, since I've been around, we've grown about 7% a year. Obviously, 2020 took us backwards a little bit of a step. I manage a local hotel, which is a Town Place Suites, and we were at 30% occupancy, obviously, during the beginning of the pandemic. Last year, it bounced back to where we were at 92% occupancy. So the numbers and the rates have steadily increased. Realistically, I just believe that we're an economic driver in the area of getting people into town. There are more and more competition lately. We've lost entities like Western States Regional Wrestling. Right now we're about to possibly lose some state tournaments, things like wrestling and high school rodeo and those kind of things, because there's event centers being built 50 miles up the road. In order to promote town appropriately, the full-time staff member would be out there digging up business, representing us, making bids to keep some of these entities and events here in town. What would that jump look like? I'd like to honestly believe it would be a 10 to 15% jump. We're a high demand market right now. Outdoors is, Utah, Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho led the country last year for visitors. And I think that trend will continue as long as there are hidden things out there that, people don't want to still get on the cruise ships and go to Disneyland, and that's more of a pain in the butt than hopping in the car and bring your family to Idaho. However, gas prices and inflation and hotels are up 32% this year. There's a lot of numbers out there, but there's a lot of limitation. But I think as we go down the road, we want to see our events grow. We want to see things like the Port Neuf Wellness Complex and the concerts and the events and the brew fests and the senior games, and all of these events continue to grow and have more people come into our community. So a full-time person would ensure some of that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Richard.
Sorry.
Jeff, how does your projected usage of this full-time person conflict or add to the MEX efforts to attract visitors to our community?
Well, I think that we all need to work together. And realistically, my main goal when taking this chair was to get Bannock County, the city of Chubbuck, Pocatello, the MEC, and Visit Pocatello all together with the same goals and the same achievements. I don't like the fact that everybody is working independently on their own roads some ways. We all have the same goal of to represent our area with a positive representation, get the marketing out there and draw people to Pocatello, whether it's for sporting events. I'd love to see us be a destination for small market meetings down the road, which means bring 300 people in from out of town and say, hey, we're gonna have a 3-day convention because we're 2 hours from everywhere. There's a lot of things that limit that, but in the long run, we all need to work together with the MEC as a part of it. And I truly believe that $75,000 is what I'd like to have in the long run, but it should come from all those entities together in one.
Linda?
Sort of a building on that question, not really a follow-up, but what about Bannock development? I think they're very much part of this mix. How much do you work with them?
Absolutely.
As well?
I actually got invited to the investors' dinner with me and Kate next week. We try and house people when she has high-profile clients come into town. We've talked about Bannock development possibly helping to house Visit Pocatello. And part of this is we're actually looking for a full-time home right now. And as this grant has grown from $80,000 a year to $280,000 a year over the last 7 years, it's just not capable of being managed by a volunteer board of directors at this point. I'd be happy to see it housed either in the chamber or the Bannock County or in the city of Pocatello. But it needs a full-time employee that can dedicate and do its work correctly. But Bannock development, wonderful. Enjoy the group and work well with them.
Chris?
Yeah, with the other organizations that we've heard from today, it's very easy and clear for the taxpayers to know what they're getting for their money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you outline in just, a few words, what exactly is it statistically, supported by stats, what exactly is it that we know the taxpayers are receiving as bang for their buck from Visit Pocatello?
I guess I should be more prepared with those overall numbers because I'm not. But we know that tourism is the #2 industry in the state.
Right.
People are coming into Yellowstone in droves.
Right.
Our goal is to get them off the freeway to spend money in our economy.
Right. And
all that kind of fun stuff.
Right, and I've read a lot of tourism reports, and of course there, as you mentioned with gas prices, there's already, and recession-minded spending, there's already a curtailment of travel and yada, yada. But I guess I would like to be able to articulate, not now, I don't need the numbers now, but I would like to be able to articulate to the taxpayers, this is what you're getting for the money that council is spending, and this is why, this is how it stacks up against other community needs, so that I have a clear rationale.
I understand. I'd like to see more of a specific return on investment based on the dollars spent.
Exactly, because we have some crying needs.
I agree. Food and housing is more important than tourism by far.
But it's that cycle that I was talking about with economic development and tourism and et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's in these kinds of times, I think I feel obligated to be able to articulate clearly to the public why this money and not that money. And then I'm wondering how involved, and I understand it's a volunteer board, so that says a lot right there. Thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
But I'm wondering what kinds of conversations, for example, how involved have you been in conversations with the Alan and Christy at the airport and so forth? Sounds as though you've been, and can you speak a little bit about what your involvement to date, or if there has been real actual involvement to date with Bannock County development, or if that's just in the beginning stages?
There's a lot to answer there.
Yeah,
honestly.
sorry.
With Bannock County development, for example, right now we have $40,000 into this year's grant to develop a package to bring people to Pocatello, whether it's tourism or business related. So that would be a marketing campaign that includes video shots of a lot of our prominent tourism and just the area. The quality of life is what we want to show through that, of how nice that is. But we're working with Bannock Development and Bannock County and the city of Pocatello to create some of those video assets that we can use in multiple different entities. To answer other parts of that, I could put together something with some statistics, probably within a week's time or less, that would give you a good example of what's going on, as in return on dollars and those kind of things.
Right.
I feel like there's so many numbers out there, and especially internet related right now, that's very scary.
Right.
Things have went from 50% print and digital to almost all being digital.
Right.
And you get a lot of numbers. Hey, I saw one the other day that 2.4 million people had read an article out of Boise's tourism department.
Right.
And you're like, wow, that's a pretty high number, you know?
Right, right. And then again, I don't know relative to the airport, because the more people that we could bring in to Pocatello through our airport,
Yep.
that clearly begins to
And I see
support.
that in other areas. Idaho Falls and Boise and others highly market towards their airport, and I would love to see more development. We've been involved with some of the airport boards. Peter Pruitt with the zoo is on our board. Leaf Tapnia with Idaho State. Stephanie Pelagi and Matt Hunter have been kind of the background of this board for many, many years, and we work kind of in the background. A lot of people don't even realize we exist just because we can't spend money within a 50-mile radius. And again, with limitations on grants, we can't use any of that money for staffing. And I am an operational gentleman. I have been behind the scenes trying to keep this functioning and going for years. But with the limitations on the staffing and that kind of thing, it's just, I've jumped the request in. I know in order to keep this grant, we need to have somebody pay attention to it. That is their full-time commitment and passion. So that's the general ask there. But we work with everybody in town, airports. My goal is to make anybody and everybody that we can that's involved.
Okay, Roger?
So what I hear from your description is that there's nobody that ultimately is accountable. All of you guys are volunteers, and you need somebody to staff stuff to make sure stuff happens.
Yes, right now I am ultimately the person who is accountable, and I hate to say I have a very active day most days. I operate a hotel. I'm also on the travel council. I've got 2 kids, and I enjoy the passion of what I'm doing, but it's become something that was 8 hours a week, so now it's something that's 25 hours of my week of volunteer. So yes, and I also award that grant, which I hate to say. The grant award is coming up in July. And we've talked with the Attorney General, and that is not a conflict of any way, shape, or form, because I don't profit in any way, shape, or funds from this. But it's tough to award when you know that it needs more, even in your own backyard. It's a little challenging.
So one of the visionary things you have, and I'm going to just say Elko is what I see marketed more than any place around us on the television, and you're seeing us not just be a stop-off place, but be a destination in terms of getting things out there, and this is what you can do for 3 or 4 days in Pocatello. That's part of the marketing you have as a vision.
Yes, I'd like to see that, and the mayor and I have talked in the past, and I know that we are the gate city, and that is who we are, and we're the stop. So we'd really like to market the fact that we're 2 hours from everywhere. Come let us be your home base. You can go to Jackson Hole, you can go to Sun Valley, you can go to Yellowstone and come back to here. We still like to think we're a little more reasonable in rates than a West Yellowstone or the Yellowstone Park itself.
Yeah.
So yes, we're trying to be, and it's tough. I go to travel shows and represent the city in Salt Lake and Canada and other places. And I've got Rocky Mountain trains and safaris and all kinds of things on the other side. And here's Jeff saying, hey, a couple years ago I was doing, if you got $200, 2 days and 2 hours, 2 and 2, come on up to Pocatello. It's a $200 trip, it's a 2-hour drive, and it takes 2 days. It's not as flashy as this $22,000 African safari, but please come visit us.
And less lion eating you danger too.
Yes.
So if I thought there was an executive director for the tourism group years ago, was there?
I don't know how to approach that. There was a CVB that got sued in 2005 and disbanded. What came out of that was the Auditorium District, which Raul Cano now runs, and then kind of Visit Pocatello, which has been headed by Stephanie Plaggi as the chair until I took it over about 3 years ago.
So the Auditorium District is a separate function.
They have a 5% tax that hits or comes off the hotels that is separate than the 2% tax that we are funded for. We, again, would like to be great partners with them, but they are
Best thing
separate.
we could do is get a tax option, where we could get Pocatello designated as a tourist city, where we could actually have a tax on tourists.
And that's kind of what that 2% is. It's only on hotels.
Yeah.
So
I think Lava gets it, we don't.
You have to be under 10,000
And you got to be under
population.
10,000 people.
Gotcha.
That's the issue. Okay, Rick, and then Chris.
Jeff, do you think you can fund this position with the $75,000? Or are you looking at other sources of funding a full-time? I mean, that doesn't seem like a lot for a full-time position.
Correct. The full-time position, we were talking around $45,000 a year was going to be our budget for it. But you're also talking about, we have one employee at the visitor center currently who manages about 25 volunteers. And I'm definitely going to tap into the senior center afterwards to get them out in the community. And we need those volunteers at the visitor center down on South 5th. But in general, for one associate, yes, I believe those funds would be enough.
And that would fund the travel, that would fund the promotions, the
Well,
marketing.
the other part of that says the hourly wage is really what we're needing to fund. So things like the travel and some of that will be paid for by the grant. So when we go to represent us at travel shows, or if we went to put in a bid to get wrestling back or something of those natures, that travel expenses, those would be taken care of by the grant that is fundable.
Okay,
So
thank you.
we're really just looking at the base pay, I would say.
Sounds good. Chris?
Yeah. I thought I heard you say that you were looking to find the $75,000 from the various entities that you work with. But then I'm thinking that your request to us is $75,000.
Well, my mentality is ask for a little more. I understand where you're coming from. I'd like somebody to own it. We have requested funds from the city of Chubbuck and the city or Bannock County. Neither have provided those funds. I'd like to one-stop shop, honestly, and I asked for the moon, not expecting to get it. But in a realistic mentality of mine, I do believe it's a community effort, and we need to find a way to bring in the city of Chubbuck, as well as Bannock County and some others that would be a part of this.
And I think I heard, please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm verifying here. I believe I heard you say that along the lines of we need somebody to own this for it to really grow into what it could be. And I believe I heard you say that you would not be adverse to, for example, if this were under a Bannock County development
Not
umbrella
Bannock County.
or,
Bannock
Not
Development.
I'm sorry, Bannock Development umbrella. I mean, is that, I mean, are you,
Any agency that would care about the endeavor, I'd be
Right.
happy to have it under their umbrella as long as they cared and would help maintain with
right? I mean,
some
I'm
staff.
just looking at, at creating duplicate structures, duplicate office space for this person, duplicate staff, rather than maybe taking something like Bannock Development that already exists with a different but related
Oh, absolutely.
focus. They're already working, very hard with the airport, for example, and then bringing this in to that structure, to make it to make a really well-rounded three-dimensional structure. I mean, that to me personally is more appealing than creating yet another potentially somewhat siloed individual organization.
I understand that, absolutely. We do have the space out of the visitor center to house 2 employees right now. And CCOG, who I've heard mentioned numerous times, Dave Duran has helped us. We are a standalone entity right now with 1 employee. So we are functional with the 1 employee we have. But again, it's a part-time employee, and she is underpaid for what she does.
Sure.
But yes, I would love the support of coming in under a Bannock development or a historic downtown or a Chamber of Commerce or City of Pocatello. It would be welcomed.
So you're an orphan.
It's an yeah. People, when the regional rodeo left here, or the big rodeo that was here left, I believe in 2012, the year before we got here, we saw things like Bish's and Vickers and those kind of places go out of business after time. And the impact that made in a week in restaurants, bars, and gas stations. I mean, we need to have those events, especially in our shoulder months in town. So those October, November, December, if we can bring people into town, I think it'll make a great impact. And having a full-time person, I believe that is capable. We do need one more nice facility out here, I will say. And I know that is coming. But we need a nice facility to house people in as well, something that is modern with good ballroom space that can provide a good experience for our guests. So.
One more
Yeah.
follow-up question. So there are a lot of activities that already have, we have numerous bike events, trail events that already bring people from all over. But if you're not in that silo, you don't necessarily even hear about them. And so I'm wondering what kinds of relationships you've had with, with all of these organizations that are already doing events, and they're already happening. And what kind of drawing those together and, packaging them and so forth and so on, that doesn't require another facility. It doesn't require any more work because the work's already being done, et cetera, et cetera. What kinds of relationships have you built, and what kinds of promotional activities have you done in relationship to those kinds of events that already exist?
Well, I'm an advocate who's out there at whether it's a chamber board meeting or a chamber lunch. I do a lot through the chamber and was the past chair last year. I always advocate Visit Pocatello and anybody growing events and those kind of things to please come out and reach out to me. We work with the crews from the bike shop. We work with Corey, who is out at Pebble Creek. With things like the Pocatello Marathon, we've partnered with them for years and place ads in the Boston Marathon magazines and those kind of things to get people to the Pocatello Marathon. So we have a partnership with a lot of the good. I'd like to thank everybody in town that would bring people in, but of course I'm going to miss some. We started this year with Pocatello Downs a little bit to try and bring more people into the races and the overnights. So the foundation is definitely out there. We started a city play pass last year. Which was really Leaf and Peter with the zoo, but we have one pass now where somebody can come into town and purchase it for $80, and your family can go to all the entities in town, or the major tourist ones, which in our minds right now are the Museum of Clean, the Bannock County Historical Museum, the Natural History Museum, Ross Park, and Zoo Idaho. So for one pass, you can pay, and it allows your family in for the summer to each entity once. But what it also does is say, hey, I'm coming up for 2 days. I'm going to go to Ross Park and the zoo today. Oh, I can buy this pass. That'll encourage a second trip into town a month, before school gets out. Hey, we'll come back so we can hit these other entities on the play pass. But the play pass is something we're very proud of. Last year, again, was the first year, and I'd like to see that expand as something just to get people into town and show them some of what we have to offer there.
So rather than a bunch of numbers for me, I guess maybe for me, in my request to be able to tell the public what they get for the money that we spend on their behalf, I guess, just a bulleted list, for example, would be, for me, would be really informative.
Okay.
And then and then any, I'm not interested in algorithmic numbers or, percentages based on, the trade, so to speak. I would just like to be more informed and be able to be more articulate relative to what Visit Pocatello does and provides, because it sounds as though you do a lot of valuable things, but since the advertising isn't here,
Correct.
we don't see it.
Correct.
And we don't we don't have an opportunity other than this opportunity to really talk with you as a council member. So thank you.
Claudia?
Could I just, if you don't already, maybe include the Nordic Center in that play pass, that you consider roping them in, because there's nothing better than skiing up there.
You're absolutely
Cross-country skiing and snowshoeing, and they have that sled hill for the littles. And, I mean, you can take your, if you're traveling with your mutts, you can take your dogs. And, I mean, it's just so if they're not already part of that play pass, you might consider trying to get them in on that, because I think that would be something that would be useful, especially in the winter months.
I agree.
When people are,
I agree. We're
not
very
going
seasonal with Ross Park and the zoo, and some of those entities are not open. So maybe we do need to entertain a summer and a winter play pass for the two different.
Pebble Creek, for that matter.
Pebble Creek is great. They've partnered a long time with us that if you purchase hotel rooms in Pocatello and take your receipt down to Pebble Creek, they'll give you half off their lift tickets.
And so then my mind goes to a play package Pocatello where you have your air ticket, you have, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
I mean, that, if we're thinking down those, because then it doesn't matter if you arrive at 1 o'clock in the afternoon
Right.
or leave at 1 o'clock or whatever the flight times are, because you're here to play. It's not like you have to hyperventilate about getting someplace on time, et cetera.
And I hate to say we are targeting more the drive market than the fly-in market, just based on where we're at. But we are the drive and the stop too, and we want them off the commute or off the highway and just to show Pocatello is a great community. We all live here because we love it, I hope. I was not planning on living here forever, but a stop in the map and the quality of life and the people. We just want to showcase that. And there's enough talk too of you want to be able to showcase that, get people off the freeway, but you don't want them to buy the 1 or 2 houses that we do have available too. So we want to showcase town well enough without
So your
convincing
slogan
everybody
is
to
come
stay.
visit, but you can't stay?
But we also want to work with Bannock Development to get people here long term. But it's a catch, you know what I mean? Some people look at you and go, really? You want to bring more people in?
You have a 48-hour limit. We validate your entry ticket.
Fine lines, yes.
Strategically using the traffic stop at the connector or the complex on the highway being redesigned, we could use that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any other hands, so thank you very much.
I appreciate it. And if anybody'd like to have any questions or conversations off the books, I'd be happy to give you more information, and I will find and put together some numbers as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the last one is the Pocatello-Iwamazawa Sister City Committee. And I do not see Richard Harmon here. I know that that's also a volunteer committee, but their request is not changed over the last years, as long as I can remember. So we are finally, after 2 hours of being in the meeting, done with agenda item 2. So what we're going to do, because agenda item 3 is also a fairly large agenda item, we're going to take a break. And we'll be back in, I'd say a few minutes, but that's a lie. We know what our breaks look like. So
Mayor Blatt, can I
we'll be
answer
back
some
as soon as we can get back. Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify, I was sent a question to our executive director about our line item for rent, parking, and utilities. I want to make sure you had accurate information.
Okay.
So out of that amount that we pay for rent, parking, and utilities, the Portneuf Health Trust pays 40% of that.
Okay.
So, and we pay 60%.
Okay.
So just wanted you to have that accurate information.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right,
thank you,
super.
appreciate
Thank you so much for your
that.
time.
Thank you. All right. We'll be on break now for a few minutes.
It's Katie.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for joining us after our break. We'll go ahead and get started with agenda item number 3 is fiscal year 2023 employee benefits overview. Heather Buchanan, Human Resources Direction, and AJ, how do I say your last name? Argyle, GBS Benefits Incorporated will give a presentation. Sorry, AJ.
No, you're good. No worries. Like the socks or the sweaters, just remember that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the renewal of all our benefits here. First thing, I just want to remind you guys, how's the city of Pocatello insured? We're fully insured through Blue Cross of Idaho, which we have been for the last few years. We're going to stay with Blue Cross of Idaho. We'll talk about why. We'll talk about the current experience in that. And just to remind you guys, we have taken a very proactive approach to managing the plan for the city of Pocatello. We have our data analytics system in, which is actually reviewed by our in-house pharmacist. We have 2 physicians on staff and then also an in-house psychologist that goes through that reporting. It runs through an algorithm, then spits out anything that might be red flagged, and then we work with the insurance carrier to maybe do additional testing, maybe procedures or something like that for different members. We have an aggressive plan design. We feel like we've curbed the RX expenses quite a bit in increasing those co-payments. And then we have made case and care management mandatory for anyone that qualifies for that, and I think that's helped manage our large claimants as well. We do have a handout provided.
You have a very large spreadsheet in front of you. I can go through that now, or I can go through that as we start talking about the renewal.
As you guys talk about the renewal, for me, it's fine.
Okay. So the increase you can see up there, Blue Cross of Idaho gave us a 14.2% increase, which is a very large increase, and we'll talk about why that is here in just a minute. Included in that renewal is HealthJoy, which is the app that has, your cards all on there. You can access the telemedicine and also has a concierge service. Blue Cross has also given us a care guides, a personal concierge service for all the employees of the city of Pocatello. This is the only one they've done in the entire state for a fully insured group. We're the first one, kind of a test pilot for it. And the reason we've done that is customer service has been lacking with Blue Cross of Idaho over the last year. And we've done some complaining in that, and they felt to make this up, they're willing to give us this program, which actually runs usually about $5.50 to $6 per employee per month. They've given us this program to kind of demo and try out, which I thought was really nice of them, considering the issues we've had. Reporting experience and background, we're going to talk about that now. So what does experience mean? Experience is essentially premium paid in versus claims paid out. And then what is a loss ratio? A loss ratio is essentially the same thing too. It's just the premium paid in versus claims paid out. But keep in mind on that loss ratio, when you're looking at that, that's just actual dollars that we paid Blue Cross and they paid out claims. That does not include administration. Administration is generally about 15 percentage points is what they're allowed to take based on PPACA. And so none of these numbers that you're looking at includes that additional 15%. So keep in mind, Blue Cross hasn't taken their piece of the pie yet. What is a large claimant? A large claimant is essentially any claim over $10,000, whether that be an employee, spouse, or dependent. And then trend is essentially medical inflation, and that varies from carrier to carrier. Every carrier has their own opinion on what that is. In Idaho, I talked to the carriers, the larger carriers in Idaho, and they're calling it anywhere from 6 to 8.6% right now. If you go nationally, they're calling that 10%. But that 10%, they're saying actually could be higher once you factor in the COVID factor as well as inflation, and they're saying that could be as high as 11 or 12%. So while our trend isn't great, the medical inflation, it's actually better still than the national average by almost half, which is good. So our current experience there, you can look at for 21 to 22, our loss ratios run 103%. So what that means basically for every dollar that we give Blue Cross, they're paying out $1.03 in claims. They're losing 3 cents on every dollar, and that does not include the 15% administration fee or 15 cents on every dollar that generally Blue Cross would be taking. So Blue Cross is losing not only that 3 cents on every dollar, but also another 15 cents on every dollar that they're not making on the administration. Total claims October through April, you're talking about 7 months of experience there, is $3.7 million. So if you look at our comparison to October through September last year, which is our plan year, our loss ratio ran 85%, and on 12 months, we ran $5 million in claims. So you're talking 7 months, we're running $3.7 million in claims. If we continue this trend, we're going to end somewhere between $6.3 and $6.4 million in claims, about $1.3 or $1.4 million more this year than we had last year, if the trend continues. We currently have 67 large claimants. Those claims total $2.5 million, once again, for only 7 months, averaging $38,000. 69% of our overall claims are those large claimants. If you look at last year, our 92 large claimants claimed total $3.6 million, almost $40,000 average, were 76% of our overall claims. RX costs are run about 23% currently and 25% last year. And those numbers are kind of skewed as well because we've had a lot of large inpatient, a lot of large claims. Your RX cost per person may not be going up, but the percentage does, or going down, but your percentage does because your overall claims are going up, and it's a percentage of all that together, if that makes sense. So that's why we're seeing a decrease in our prescription costs there. We did put our benefits out to bid, some of them anyway. We put the EAP out. We only had one company actually come back and give us a bid, and the reason for that is we have a very complex EAP program with fire and police getting those 20 visits, and then the mandatory visit in the police and that. We expect the cost to remain flat or at very least a decrease. I think you'll see a minor decrease in that, and Heather will talk a little bit more about that. Our VSP or our vision is in the second year of a rate guarantee, so we left that one alone. Our life insurance, I went to Symetra and said, I'm going to take this out to bid unless you can give me a better offer. And they took our basic life down by 35%. We were paying $1.62 per employee per month. They took that down to $1.05, which I thought was a really good deal, a 35% decrease not to take that to bid, so we didn't take that one out. The dental's currently out to bid. We've got some very competitive options in there. We're leaning towards staying with Delta Dental. We could get a little bit more on the savings end if we move to another carrier. That's going to switch up the networks, and it's also going to lower the number of providers that we can access. So we're weighing all those options right now to see what we're going to do as far as the dental goes. But at the very least, your costs will take at least a 10% decrease over what you're currently paying. And we were able to get a 2-year rate guarantee on that. So that'll be the same rate next year on the dental, and then there'll be a cap of 5% on that third year. So even on that third year, it's still going to be 15 points less than what you're currently paying, which we felt was a really good deal on that as well. So basically, our solid relationship with Blue Cross is the reason we decided to kind of renew that. And then our claims experience, I mean, when we're like, Blue Cross is losing money on every dollar that we paid them, we didn't feel like it'd be advantageous to go out and actually bid that with other carriers. There's not going to be a lot of people that are going to want to jump in and take a run at your business when they're losing money on it. We are keeping a very close eye on the experience. It has turned a little bit of a corner, and if it continues to trend down, we will actually go back to Blue Cross and look at maybe possibly lowering that number, but we're at least 2 or 3 months away from having those discussions. So,
super. Questions for AJ?
So that's the worst we can expect?
Is the 14.2? Absolutely, yeah. It won't go any higher than that. And we're hoping maybe to be able to beat that up. It's just going to depend on how the experience goes over the next few months. So
I was going to say, I think you've done great because you projected 14% last year. Mm-hmm. It's been a wild year since then.
It's been a rough year.
Crazy.
So,
It's been crazy.
I mean, not only that, but all the other cost factors and stuff. So,
yeah.
I think if we can do it, 14.2 is our highest we're going. We're right at our projections.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd like
I'll
to
tell you-
beat that down a couple points, but we'll see how it goes.
We weren't happy, though he projected it. We weren't happy
yeah.
with 14.
Better
But we
than
knew
20.
it was coming because we
Yeah.
got a good deal last year.
Yeah, I remember
decrease.
talk of 20 to 25% last year.
That's what we were prepping.
And so 14.2 is like, but what's the dollar amount of that 14.2? Do you know that, Heather?
Okay, pull your little spreadsheet out. Now,
Okay.
these
Okay,
are.
we have any before Heather starts? Any others for AJ? Okay, Heather.
So these are going to be, we're going to call these soft numbers. I ran into some problems with the salary projection file while I was at work yesterday, and no one was around to answer my questions because it was 1 a.m., so you're getting soft numbers.
It was actually this morning, not yesterday.
So I've split our benefits. Next time I'll call you all at 1 a.m. and get some guidance.
Don't do it.
So the top section in blue, that's your full-time employee status, and then green is your half-time, and then at the bottom is fire. Fire, again, does not run through salary projections. That is a line item, so I'll talk about that briefly in a moment. So on line 1 through, 5, that's our medical plan. Employee, employee plus spouse, employee plus child, children, and then family. The 14.2% based off of my soft numbers. The increases are in that dark, on the black column and the white. So our biggest increase is always going to be in family, and that's just under $500,000. That number will go down because in salary projections, everybody has a vacant position, we budget at a family rate. We are constantly trying to hire, so we adjust those as we can. If we hit a point in the budget, because that happens in June where you guys give us permission to publish and stuff, we do have to have solid numbers, so there will still be some high numbers in there, but that doesn't mean they'll be expended, but we will have to budget for them.
Heather, does this blue category include PPD?
Yes.
Okay.
Health Joy shows as a negative because it's now included in your Blue Cross costs. Dental, we built in with the Delta Dental 10%, so there's a decrease there. And then EAP, we do have broken down. That is not in salary projections, it's a line item in police's budget, HRs and fires. We're saving about 21,000 there. The police line is a little wonky. It's in line item 4005, which is consulting services. They have their EAP in there, and that's where we used to house the union attorney costs for 20,000. We've been using that to cover some of the EAP, so that whole line item we would just eliminate because we no longer have that function. So overall, we're anticipating, if worst case scenario right now, our increase for the year would be about 810,000 for general employees, police, for medical, dental, EAP.
Not fire.
Fire is a little bit different. They're separate. So they're at the bottom. Fire's plan, they don't change in October, they change in January. So when we budget, we do 3 months of what we know, and then 9 months of the estimated max increase that we would cover. They are seeing a, let's see, fire is going down, ambulance is going up, just because of changes in employees dropping from family to single usually. So that plan is a little bit cheaper in the general fund this year at 132,000. We don't know what their costs will be, so we budget at the full amount that the CBA allows for.
Question, and I just might remind the council, these are soft numbers because at 1 a.m. she ran into a thing yesterday.
I ran into a thing. I could not get around.
Thanks for the details.
That's right. So she will work through that, and we'll be getting those numbers a lot. They won't be so liquid in the future.
They're fluid at the moment,
Yeah.
but this gives you an idea of where we sit. The 14.2 is rough for us, but everything else is at a multi-year decrease or freeze. That's a pretty big win. We're gonna know 2 or 3 years worth of other benefit costs. Don't worry, we'll aggressively stay in contact with Blue Cross if those numbers go down. If they go up, we'll just wave with my piece of
That's
paper
right.
in hand. This is 14.2.
So questions for Heather?
Questions won't change it.
I'm not seeing any, and so we're probably going to need to digest this a little bit, and there'll
It's a
probably
lot
be
of
some in the
numbers.
future. So it's a lot of information. So thank you very much.
It's hard to digest, our claims will go up.
That's right.
Digest slowly and safely.
There you go. Okay, thank you very much. Then with that, we'll move to agenda item 4 is a new employee request. Heather Buchanan, Human Resources Director, will give a presentation. AJ, thank you.
So as you're working that,
There we go.
are these requests at all, they've got insurance costs too, don't they?
Yes, they would, and the costs that are shown on here include this year's rates.
So that, okay, so this sheet doesn't include these,
No.
okay.
So every year, new position requests come in. We've started to try to give you a brief summary at the beginning of budgeting of what you're going to see from the department presentations. So I just briefly want to go through those. So the first one on the list, Transit is requesting a new full-time driver. I have a note that says this is grant funded. It is partially grant funded, and the existing funds that Skylar has would be used to cover the city match. He is not asking for an increase in his budget to cover this position. He would use funds already existing. The cost of that is coming in at about $67,000. Then we have 2 sanitation positions. One's a senior operator and one is a machinist fabricator welder. Those are both enterprise funded. They're both coming in at about $78,000. The zoo is requesting a full-time zookeeper. This is going to be one of your tax asks, so you would be looking at it. The position and benefits comes in at $73,000. Police is asking for 2 new positions. They do have outside revenue. One is from the school district. The other is that ICAT grant that they received that we approved, I believe, back in December. And then we are asking for 2 utility locators. And those would be split-funded enterprise for water and WPC, and then partially with street. We would house those out of the Public Works Annex, and in the winter, when we slow down a little bit on our locates, because construction has slowed a little, we would project code them to street to handle snow plowing. So if you have questions, this is a time to start thinking about them, because you can see everything at once, and then the departments can answer those individually in their budget
Okay, well,
presentations.
I'm going to have a question here because on the street, if they're going to snowplow, will that get rid of having to hire people to plow? Because I saw us paying for some snowplowing last year.
So we definitely, so street does need more operators and equipment to help handle the snow loads. This is a way to utilize that position with the other department's needs. The utility locators are built into the rate study, and we haven't brought that back before council since I believe the rate study was set in place when the original ask was said no.
Yeah, could you just quickly, like, I remember that transit is no increased tax ask. Can you just quickly go through which ones of these or percentages of these would actually be tax asks?
So that's underfunding type. So you have grant and then
Oh,
enterprise.
sorry. Got it.
So the zookeeper would be totally.
It would be a total
Do we
tax
have a
ask.
zookeeper?
We have multiple zookeepers.
And we need another zookeeper?
We need more zookeepers. Our zoo is not built on a flat plain. It is built on a hill. That makes keeping the yards much more difficult than it would if it was just a flat space.
So, okay, so then I'm not understanding what a zookeeper is. I thought a zookeeper kept the animals.
They do, but they take care of the,
Of the habitats?
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Peter can knock all these questions out in the budget meeting.
Yeah, and Peter will be, these departments will be
Yeah, no,
presenting in the
that
future.
that's fine.
so-
I was just confused. I thought, okay, got it, that makes sense.
Animals and their enclosures.
And their enclosures.
So, Chris, to answer your question, you've got a zookeeper, and then your locators, you've got 34% in the two
Right, I understand,
locators, so.
I was just focused on what she was saying and forgot that the info was there. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if you have any high-level questions, I can address those. Otherwise, I would refer you to the experts and
What
the
is the
department
meaning
heads.
of life?
You know, if you ask my child, it would be to not have to do chores or homework, but we're just like a day away, so
That's
they're
kind of
kind of moved beyond that one.
That kind of sounds like what my answer would be.
No chores.
No chores and no homework.
Okay, so no other questions right now, so thank you, Heather. We'll jump to agenda item 5. Man, we're moving through this now. Agenda item 5 is fuel prices. Tom Kirkman, Deputy Public Works
I don't
Director,
really
will
wanna
give a
hear this.
presentation.
I don't really want to hear about the rising fuel prices.
Certainly.
Tom, is that paper presentation the one that's on our?
Yeah, I don't know if we made any changes. We may have done a little update, so we thought we'd just give a paper one. All right. So I'm the bearer of good news today, I guess. I think we've all seen recently, fuel prices are very chaotic right now. What we've tried to do historically is we utilize the Energy Information Administration's website. That's basically their whole purpose in life is to track fuels, oil prices, as well as natural gas and other types of liquids. What we are proposing this year is moving our diesel prices from $3.01 last year to $3.20 this year, and on our unleaded from $2.66 last year to $3.32 this year.
Yikes.
Yes, so this first sheet on your handout, you'll notice that the EIA projection on the left is $3.90 for diesel and $3.62 for unleaded. Normally on our purchases, we average about 70 cents a gallon cheaper than that when we purchase diesel through our bidding process. And we're about 30 cents a gallon cheaper on unleaded than the EIA projections based on our bidding.
Tom, when did you capture this?
This was pretty recent, so it's been within a couple of weeks.
What I saw today, I went to that site, it had, for 2023, $3.51 for gasoline, but $4.06 for diesel.
Right, yeah, it's been changing by the minute. So this was done about a week and a half ago.
I just wanted to illustrate that.
Absolutely.
It's hard, there's no crystal ball for this right now.
Absolutely not. I have a Magic 8-Ball app on my phone, so I'll be ready for questions afterwards.
This last column, Tom, is that, like, for example, under diesel, is that 225,000 gallons, is that for the whole year? Is that what you average use?
Yep, citywide.
Okay.
Yep.
And that, and for fuel, for gasoline, does that include PD as well?
Yep, everyone that fuels out of the city fuel site. That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
And do we fuel it?
There are a couple that don't fuel out of the site. So you've got PRT that does not fuel out of the site. You've got WPC,
Airport,
and airport.
just for logistics. Yeah.
And we don't have any random P-card fuel purchases?
There is an occasional random purchases like when there's travel, but for the majority of the purchases are done through the city's
So
fuel
we
site.
can use this, apart from what the mayor has mentioned, we can use this as our, pretty much our top number.
Right. So just a
go
heads up, October 1st of this year, I mean, we were on a pretty good trajectory to hit these budget numbers, and it's gone up $3 in 8 months on diesel. So it's just, it basically, I mean, we saw, about it was roughly about 66% increase in unleaded, 90% in diesel from last year. But then when February hit, everything just kind of went crazy when the invasion of Ukraine happened.
Rick?
Tom, what's been your experience with these EIA projections? Have they been fairly accurate or?
So on the second, I believe it's the second page of your handout, we've provided a graph for unleaded as well as diesel. And so the one on the left you'll see is the EIA projections for the last, since 17. The gray line is the average actuals, which we've been purchasing at. And then our orange line is our budget. So you can see that our actuals have followed EIA's projections almost exactly. I think right now we're kind of in an anomaly. I don't know if it's going to go down quickly or not. I know that they're releasing 40 million barrels over the next 6 months out of the strategic petroleum reserves to try and deal with this, but I don't know if that's going to make an effect, because I think they started that in March and it really hasn't shown any dividends on that yet. So right now, in my opinion, the only thing that we've really got of any stability is the data from EIA. And I don't know if that's correct or not, but that's about as close as we can get.
But it looks
for an
like
assumption.
their trend seems to follow the actual. Our trend doesn't look like it's followed anything.
Yeah, I know last year, I was saying I didn't think we were going to see that big of a jump last year, and I don't think we would have as bad had the Russian invasion not happened, but we've definitely missed the mark a few times throughout the years on some of our estimations. That's why I wanted to present this graph to you guys to maybe calm your nerves a little bit on the EIA projection front. Does that make
And
sense?
what happens to any money that we save on fuel? For example, does it go into obviously, if it's related to an enterprise fund, then it must stay there to be used to offset. So where are we at a net gain or a net loss based on, on your graph and so forth?
So the departments only pay for the fuel as they buy it. So if they use less fuel, they don't spend as much money out of their budget.
Right.
If fuel prices go up,
Right.
then
Right.
it costs more out of their budget.
But
And then at the end of the year, depending on the fund, if there's excess, it just goes back into that fund.
But presumably fuel cost is part of the rate study for things like sanitation.
Yes.
So then doesn't that money then have to stay within the enterprise fund?
It does, yes.
Okay.
And what we're seeing right now is departments are paying quite a bit right now for fuel costs. And so we've sent out some emails to the department heads to evaluate where they're at in their budget and, whether they can absorb that extra cost or if we're going to have to look at doing some amendments for this year, just because we've seen this unprecedented rise in fuel that no one really could have predicted.
And so we'll see a budget amendment in September that will capture that. Claudia?
So if I'm doing the math right, we're looking at about $123,930 in increase in fuel costs, which puts us at a little over $1 million a year, just estimating.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so a large user of the diesel are the utilities. I didn't break that down. So a lot of, some of this cost will be in the utilities and won't be borne by all tax funded.
Rick?
Tom, when you buy fuel for X dollars, what do you charge the departments?
So we put a surcharge on for operations and maintenance, and I believe it's 18 cents a gallon for unleaded and 25 cents for diesel. And those costs are included in these projections. So this is what we actually sell it to the departments at.
The $2.66 a gallon is what the department pays. Okay, with the 18
With the
cents.
administration cost. I'll send you an email. I can't remember that.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I'll get you the
Yeah, okay.
cost. So it's just kind of not good news, but it could be a little worse, I think.
It's reality.
I think by August, they're saying $6 a gallon for unleaded. But the projections are showing that as I've watched a lot of hearings lately in DC, and they're pushing really hard for drillers to start producing more to try and drive these prices down. And so it's just going to kind of have to see what the summer brings, because demand's going to go up. And so it's just a matter of whether we pump more oil or not.
In California, it's already well over $6 a gallon for unleaded.
Unfortunately, I believe it's become political now, to a certain extent.
It's industry manipulated to a degree.
It is.
Because I saw a graph that shows how they're making a lot more money because of the increase than they were,
Yep.
on the barrels and stuff. I also read another article that talked about, it was from the perspective of somebody in the industry. And he says one of the biggest problems is not the price per barrel. It's the fact that we haven't built a new refinery, a total new refinery in 30 or 60 years, I think he said.
Wow.
And so the capacity for processing this isn't efficient.
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, so the surcharge to departments then shows up in your departmental budget as an income line?
Yes.
Okay, I just,
In the fuel budget. Yep.
okay, yeah, I've just never,
That pays for administrative, the bidding, and the person
Right.
that manages the fuel site, as well as any
Right.
maintenance and all that.
okay, thanks.
Okay.
It's kind of a scary deal. So I know that the oil that they're pulling out of the strategic petroleum reserves is a sour crude, they call it. So it requires a lot more refining. So I don't know if that's necessarily going to help bring costs down either. We're not going to be pumping out sweet crude, which is the good stuff without sulfur and all that stuff.
About the time we see prices going down, we'll raise them because we're filling it back up.
Yep, exactly. So
Fueled my truck last week, it was $142.
yeah, it's brutal right now. But like I said, this is about as best of a somewhat data-driven guess I can give you.
And it'll change by the next time we talk to you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much. Then with that, we will move to fiscal year 2023 proposed fee increases. Department heads will be present to discuss proposed fee increases.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. While she's getting that set up, I'm Jared Johnson, City Attorney for the City of Pocatello. With me, I have Andre Duffin. She is our Senior Legal Assistant in the Legal Department. She has taken on the role this year of gathering and consolidating all of the fee increases and new fee requests from the various departments. And she has put that together in a presentation for you today so that you can look at those. Not everything you're seeing today will be a fee increase or new fee, but there's some rearranging that we've done. You've seen ordinances, and you will see another ordinance soon that gets fees where they belong, and that's in the fee resolution, so that they can be changed easily and cheaply as we need to from year to year. And then there was also some discrepancies between what the ordinance said and what the resolution said, and we're cleaning all that up. So as we go through this, there'll be various department heads that come up that answer their questions. We facilitated and we consolidated, but they certainly are the ones that are the experts on exactly what the fees are for and why the increase is being proposed to you. So with that, we'll start with airport, and we can look at their increases. And if Alan needs to answer any questions, I believe he's still in the room. And this is really a time for you, council, to look at those and ask any questions that you have.
I have a question regarding all the after-hour charges. Is that if somebody flies in late or early?
Yeah, that's if.
We go out and meet them?
That's if we have a charter flight or something.
Ellen, before you get answering that, if you'd sit down there so people at home can hear what you're saying.
You bet. Alan Evans, airport manager. Yeah, those fees would be for anything that would be above what we normally would provide during our business hours. So to be really honest with you, we don't have much request for that. I don't know when the last one was, a number of years ago probably, but we do have that in our fee schedule so that we can charge that should we need to.
So is this after 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock? Or?
Yes, generally. Well, actually, in the winter months, if we had to plow somebody a route for them, my guys are usually there till the tower closes at 10 o'clock. So it probably would be something maybe even after 10 o'clock in a snow event.
And this would be a thing like when they defer a plane from Salt Lake to here in the middle of the night type of a deal, or?
Yeah, I don't know if we'd charge them for that, if it was the airlines exactly, but if it was something that was scheduled and we knew they had a charter flight would be primarily what I think we would probably charge for, is somebody coming in that way.
Sounds good. Okay, it looks like I've got Claudia and then I've got Chris.
Okay.
So for example, if I'm looking at the aircraft terminal ramp parking fee at $110 per day and you want to up it to $150, right?
Yeah.
And because I'm dumb, that's the airplane pulling up to the ramp and unloading or loading? Is that what that is?
Well, that would be to park. That's not to utilize.
That's to
not the
park and leave it
commercial
there?
schedule stuff. That would be somebody that would park something of a good size on our ramp for an extended period of time, or more than a day. And to be honest with you, that rate has never been charged. We've never had that request.
Okay.
We've never had to use that. It's just one that
So we get it if we ever do.
Right. It's there if we need it.
Okay, so then the boarding bridge use fee, is that
And
what I
that's-
was talking about?
Yeah, so the boarding bridge use fee, that's generally, we've not really charged that either. But let's say we had a charter flight that wanted to use the jet bridge to load out of, and they scheduled with TSA to screen, then they would pay that fee to use that boarding bridge.
Okay, so
to load.
so these are not fees that, for example, SkyWest is currently paying now?
No.
These are fees for like corporate jets and charters and, okay, gotcha.
That's correct. That's
Okay,
above and
thank
beyond.
you.
Yeah.
Chris, and then Josh.
Yeah, this is just to educate me. The tower's open until 10 PM as a FAA requirement?
It's just their tower hours. Each tower has their own hours, and ours is open from 6 in the morning until 10 in the evening.
Who sets those hours?
It is set by the FAA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That was
they
my
do
question, that it's
right.
something out of our control.
Yeah, we don't have any jurisdiction on that.
Okay, thank you.
Josh, then Linda.
Jared, my question is actually for you. So if you have a question regarding the airport.
Well, Alan can stay there for a
He
minute.
can
Go
stay?
ahead.
Okay. All right. So Jared, my question for you, I just want to make sure from AIC training, my understanding is that fee schedules have to be set based on the actual cost to the city. We can't be like making income from fees. So all fees that we're going to see in this presentation are based on estimated and like detailed costs.
Correct.
And that's what those figures are based off of, correct?
Yes, so it's always an estimation because it's impossible to estimate the amount of overhead that's being used, employee time, everything like that. But we would have to justify if somebody challenged us that those fees aren't above and beyond the cost that it costs us to provide the service that the fee is for.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure I had that right. Thank you.
Okay, Linda?
And my question is kind of related to that. There are several things on here that you've mentioned we either rarely or never charge. So I'm kind of curious if you could explain then what the increases are based on. If we don't charge these fees, then how are we coming up with those increases?
Yeah, the two that stand out, the boarding bridge and the terminal ramp, those have not been raised for quite some time. And so as we looked at that, we went to our commission and we were looking at, doing CPI primarily is what this is. And it's usually raised, we don't raise it every year. We kind of gauge where other airports are at and so that we're pretty much in alignment with them. It was time for us to raise a few of our rates, and so we took that 2-year CPI on the majority of them. Those two that stand out that are a little bit bigger, those are tough to really quantify, as was said, and they had not been raised for some time, and we just felt like that was probably a good number to raise that to, even though they're not used much. I hope that answers.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Alan. Construction trades.
So the construction trades, and we may or may not need Richard or anybody else up for this one because this one is specifically what I mentioned earlier, and that is that these have been traditionally housed in the Pocatello municipal ordinances. And so we're taking the opportunity this year to get them into the fee resolution. The next 4 slides are not showing any fees that we're suggesting increases to. We are showing them simply because they will appear for the first time on the fee resolution itself in the exhibits. And so if you have questions, we can certainly discuss them, but again, they are not a new fee. They're just a newly placed in the resolution fee.
Chris?
Yeah, this is probably a building department question. Way back in the day, in the Northgate materials, one of the promises made by the developers was the equivalent, to set aside the equivalent of an impact fee. I'm just assuming that that's not happening, but I just wanted to verify that.
Do you know the answer to that?
I wouldn't know the answer to that one. That
Right.
I would imagine be through
Right.
engineering.
Oh,
Instead
okay.
of the building, because we're just specific to permits.
Okay.
Permitting. So
Okay, yeah,
Any of
okay.
that
Yeah.
prior to the development of
Okay.
the subdivision
All
would
right.
be done through the building.
All right, yeah.
The impact fee was a self-imposed one, so
Right.
we would have nothing to do with it. This was
No,
nothing that comes in.
No, but
here.
I'm just trying to find out what's going on with that, that's all, and I thought you might be in the know.
That would be a
Okay.
developer question.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Then with that, we can move down to the Public Works Department fee changes. This also is a change, but also some new fees or increased fees. The change is rearranging some of where these fees are located in the exhibits themselves. The exhibits are broken up A through, I think Z almost, Y.
Y.
It ends in Y. We need one more exhibit to be a complete. A through Y. And we do that really as a convenience and courtesy to the public so that it's easier for them to find the fees versus have a 55-page resolution or a fee schedule that is hard to find. So if they kind of know the area of what they're looking for, they know what exhibit to look at, typically they can find those fees. We have a few fees that were in more than one exhibit. They were the same fee, and that's not wrong, but it might not be as convenient. We have some that are just maybe in the wrong exhibit and doesn't make them invalid, but just makes them less easy to find for the public, and so we've moved some of those. And that the first slide under Exhibit K is that case. All of these fees will now be found in Exhibit K. According to what we were told by Public Works, it made more sense for those to be housed in that location. And then the second slide of Exhibit K does have some new fees and some proposed increases, if you have any questions on those.
I've got one.
Roger?
it says cart replacement fee, and I understand why the cost would be you can't set it because it's a replacement. But my question is, when does that trigger? Because I've had like the same cart at my house since they were given out.
So
And it needs to be replaced, and I don't think wear and tear, when I'm paying other fees, is appropriate to charge me because it's worn out from service.
Tom and I actually visited about this, and his explanation will be much more clear than mine.
So we had a resin shortage the last few years nationwide, which drove the cost of carts up quite a bit. I believe it went up, I think it was almost $10 a cart. And it's still in a state of flux of what that's doing. And so if there is a cart that's deemed unusable, if it's due to normal wear and tear, we don't charge that. If it's due to dereliction, then that's what we charge that on.
Because they wear out.
They do, yeah, and we change them all the time, so, yeah. This is for one, like if someone
Takes it out camping.
starts it on fire, that happens quite a bit.
Or
They-
takes it out camping to.
Exactly, takes
Forgets
it.
to bring it home.
Yeah.
And that's listed as a current acquisition price. I believe they buy them in batches, basically, and that price changes throughout the year. So this fee will allow us to charge whatever that batch of carts cost per cart.
Okay, Claudia?
This is a Tom question too, since, so I know it's not a big increase from 1909 to 1966 for once a week collection of garbage. Is that, so that covers the increase in fuel and all of that?
Yeah, so these fees were based off of our rate study. That was
Okay.
done, the 5-year rate plan. And when we did that, the plan stated that there would be a 3% increase each year. And so that number reflects that
That's
3%
that, okay,
increase.
okay.
And it's to cover that exact thing, fuel and.
Yes. Rick?
Why is picking up a recycling cart less expensive by 2/3 than a regular refuse cart?
So one of the big things that we've noticed, the last rate study that happened, I took over sanitation like the first week that started. And so there was a lot of issues that we found in the rates that don't quite jive. And so we're hoping to address those and correct those in the next rate study, so. Yeah. That's one of them.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Next is Water Department, if you have any questions there.
I have a question for Tom. Can we go back?
Tom,
I'm
we're
sorry.
backing up.
I'm sorry. You can stay there. I mean, I just,
No,
oh, no,
he
you
needs to be
can't.
here.
Sorry. So would it ever be a consideration to pick up regular trash every other week, like recycle? Would that save people? I'm just trying to think of, I mean, everything has to be passed through to the consumer. Of course, that's happening at Walmart and Costco and everything else as well. So I'm just trying to think, is there a way, would that at all lower the cost to the consumer, or would they just have more cans and more weight and it would end up being a wash, more smelly?
Yeah, so what we've seen is the amount of garbage that households are producing is increasing pretty substantial. We've actually looked into that quite a bit, other communities that have went down that road, and what's been the big takeaway from that is a lot of illegal dumping, a lot of litter, because your can gets stacked real high,
And then the lid
and then the
flies
wind
open.
comes and takes it away. Also, one of the other ones is there becomes an issue with people taking it to the convenience store down the street and filling up their container.
Okay.
We've actually looked into that quite a bit, and the people that have done that have come right back because people are still making the same amount of trash.
There's a lot of unintended consequences from that. Okay, thank you.
One additional one is people actually going around and putting their trash in other people's cans. If you put your trash out early, things get added to it. People are driving around doing
Our
that.
drivers see that quite a bit, so, yeah.
Okay. Water? Oh, Chris.
I asked this question a few years ago, and, it didn't seem to be a productive route, but I'm just wondering, having come from a community where I could choose how frequently my garbage was picked up, and presumably they were doing that not just to give me a choice, but because it was productive on their end for some reason. And I'm just wondering, because I could happily have garbage once a month and have room to spare.
Yeah, so one of the issues that we run in with that is our routes are basically determined on the amount of cans you can dump in a day, as well as how much weight the truck can hold, because we're bound by DOT regulations of how much weight. And so if we have instances where only half the carts come out in a day, and then the next week all of them come out, it just creates a lot of instability and trying to plan how that works. Not to say it's something that couldn't be done, it would just be very difficult, in my opinion, the logistics. Because if we lose half of the weekly cans, and then for 1 week we get a whole bunch, then our trucks are now overweight because we've had to readjust the routes. So it just adds a level of complexity and some question marks, I guess, is the big thing.
Right, I mean, apparently there's a way to do it that ends up being productive for the governmental entity or the entity providing, because as I say, for I don't know, more than 10 years, and I could adjust it at will. And so apparently somehow they managed to do that, and it was financially productive for them to have that.
We can look back into it again. It also comes back to Councilwoman Ortega's question where we start to see a lot of illegal dumping because I don't want to pay for the whole month. I just want to pay for once a week.
Right.
So I'll just use the neighbor's can. There's just a lot of unintended consequences, but we can look into it again.
Well, I'm not asking you to do that. I just, as I say, having come from a community where that was just standard practice,
I could reach out to them and talk with them if you'd like.
We got Roger and then Claudia.
Just a little observation. A couple of weeks ago, before the council, we had a proposal for theoretically a gated community. I don't think we have one. I can see that can increase the cost going in and taking care of a gated community. Have we thought about fees for that?
So we currently go onto private property right now. Like we'll go into a WinCo to get their stuff, and it just requires a waiver. I would imagine that would be the same situation. I don't know if we would necessarily charge them more. We would just need permission to go onto their private property.
Claudia?
I don't see the fee for the composting. Am I missing it?
Yeah, so.
Or are you leaving that the same?
Compost is going from $5.20 to $5.36. It's on the second slide.
Second slide.
Top line.
Oh, okay.
And we're actually right now, we've had to quit putting out compost carts. We're no longer accepting people because we've reached the maximum payload for our trucks that we can haul in a day. So if we want to expand our compost program, that's something we're going to talk about in our presentation. We're probably going to need another truck and a person to expand that route.
So I just want to understand the composting thing. So we charge people to put their compostable, and then we have to pay the dump to take it, and then the dump sells it back to the people.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure I had that.
That is
right.
correct.
I used to, when I lived in San Diego, you could go to the dump, and if you had a driver's license that showed that you lived within the city limits, you could take as much of that compost as you needed.
Yeah.
So at some point you weren't paying both ends, but anyway,
In
okay.
the future, that's something that we would like to look into, is doing our own compost and make it a giveaway. So,
Thank you.
$19 for unleaded and 28 for diesel. I got a text, so, for the surcharge.
19 cents,
19 cents for
Okay.
unleaded.
not dollars. 19 cents and
We're
what,
gonna get
20?
Well, it may be by now. We can
Wait.
Just a minute, Tom.
19 cents?
19 cents for unleaded and 28 cents for diesel.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
no. Okay, 28 cents.
Gas is $2, but the surcharge is $19 a gallon. Okay, thank
That's
you.
per fill-up.
That's right.
We economize.
Full service.
Water. Any questions for water on that, council? Let's jump to water pollution.
I have a water question.
Okay, water.
So I just read that Bannock County declared a state of emergency regarding water or some such thing. So are we going to have to regulate like watering and use based on that declaration or whatever they signed?
There's certainly that possibility, just depending on usage. We currently haven't seen any usage that's triggering any decline in our existing wells at this time. We're asking consumers, and we put some, PR type stuff out in the mayor's newsletter to encourage conservation.
Okay, I was just,
But a lot of those emergency declarations are for ag users, for crops and other things. That allows the IDWR director to modify, look at water rights differently, to make some transfers and a few things like that.
okay.
And so that's really the point of Idaho's declaration for the counties that have been involved with that. And so,
okay, thank you. I know that had nothing to do with fees, but I thought it might ultimately impact them.
It's a good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jump to fire then.
Did we have any WPC questions? Okay.
Nobody moved when I asked, so.
Okay.
Fire questions. Seeing none, police. Can't believe they're giving the new fire chief a pass, but police. Seeing none, business license, Exhibit D.
Can you just give me an example of a sexually oriented legal business, just so I can?
I don't know, I don't have the definition, but
I would assume Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve.
What about there's a
Clothing store?
Club 97 or whatever it is, 79.
And equipment?
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on from that one. Very quick, I think they got an idea. Parks and Recreation Department, please. We'll go from that to parks.
Not an illustration.
There isn't there, you're right, there's no other way.
Oh, crikey.
Parks and Rec.
the first one under Parks and Rec is the cemetery fees.
It's too expensive to die these days.
I have a question, and this is a question that I was asked and I couldn't answer it for a member of the public. They wanted to know when the Wi-Fi fee for the Ross Park Pavilion was instituted, and did I vote for it? But you don't have to answer the did I vote for it. I'm just trying to, I was like,
I'm not recalling any Wi-Fi fee
Well-
for the Ross Park Pavilion. I don't think that's a part of our.
okay, that was my initial response was, I don't
Somebody was hanging out at the park collecting a $5 fee.
Somebody created a hot spot.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, because I thought, well, I sometimes don't.
We have Wi-Fi capabilities, but they're free to the users.
Right.
We don't charge
Okay.
for
All
them.
right. Yeah. So it may be some. All right. Well, thank you. I thought, okay, Chris.
I
Thank
thought
you.
you might be worried about the people in the cemetery paying a fee. Any cemetery
Yeah, can you
questions?
talk to me about the Wi-Fi fee in the cemetery?
Claudia?
I just don't know what any of these terms really mean, except for, ash and stuff. But for example, regular space standard, I see that's going from 660 to 825. And underneath that, it says regular space resident discount. And then it says NA. And so I'm assuming that was zero?
Yeah, so we are instituting, we've noticed that a couple of our surrounding cemeteries have instituted non-resident fees for services as well. And I know there's been a desire by staff and the council to, folks that aren't bearing the property tax burden to maybe be charged a little more for those services. So we felt it was appropriate this year to institute that. So it's a new fee for non-residents, which is up a bit from the standard resident fee. So that makes us kind of consistent with how we handle the spaces. We have a resident, non-resident fee for spaces. Now we'll also have that for services provided.
So
If
then should that
it's
say
recommended.
non-resident? I'm confused. Who's paying those fees, the resident or the non-resident?
So the regular space standard, that would be the non-resident fee. And then the regular space resident discount, that would be the discounted fee.
Okay, so before residents were getting buried for free?
No, before residents, we're paying the 660 as well as non-residents. So the
Okay.
825 is a bump up.
Okay, now I'm tracking.
fee,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, I'm tracking now. Thank you.
Okay, Rick?
So how are you determining residency? Is that the person being put in the hole or the person arranging for the hole?
The person buying the plots, the spaces.
So whether they're a current resident or not a resident, if they're buying a hole,
Yes.
where they live determines the price they pay.
That's, yes.
Okay.
I think the word is plot.
Yes.
If a parent dies or a grandparent dies and a grandkid comes in from New York and wants to plant them here, the grandkid has to pay the non-resident fee because the grandkid doesn't live here, even though grandpa lived here.
My understanding is it's the residency of the purchaser of the space. That's how it's assessed. Yeah.
Would it be possible to maybe somehow focus on the person being interred? Because it seems to me if they've paid property taxes for, 85 years or something, or 80 years, and then just because they're not here and didn't buy their plot in advance, it seems a little ungracious to simply say because a lot of times the estate is actually paying the purchase price, even if, grandson is standing there writing the check. I mean, I'm wondering if there's a way to factor that in somehow, that it's.
From what staff tells me, you'll have, these spaces, people like to plan way in advance, and they
Right.
purchase them when their residents and their family is all living
Right.
here. And then who knows what's going to happen? People move to Arizona or people move here and there, but they've been longtime Pocatello residents in the past. That's the situation that we run into a lot, and then they come back to be interred in their family plot, even though they may be non-residents for, the later period of their life. So that's why we determined it on the residency of the space purchaser.
Have to be able to show a driver's license?
Yeah. Driver's license and utility bills, that's how we
But
verify.
what about the situation, and I understand what you're saying, because that makes sense. People leave and then they
Right.
want to come back and
Right.
get planted with the rest of the family.
Right.
But what about, grandpa's lived here all his life.
Sure.
Grandpa dies, grandson comes from New York to put him in the ground, and we're charging the grandson a non-resident fee, even though grandpa has lived here all his life. And can't there be a separate category for that? Do you see what I'm saying? It just seems that we're penalizing somebody for coming in from out of town or out of state to take care of,
Grant.
I don't know, I'm not liking that part.
Let me check with the staff on that. I'm not intimate enough with the
Okay.
day-to-day and kind of the logistics.
Because the scenario you described, I get it,
Right,
that part
that
makes sense, but I'm just not liking that part of it. Anyway, so that's my 2 cents.
Well, and I think there's also a socioeconomic status bias in that, because people who are in a position to, many people who live paycheck to paycheck are not in a position to purchase either funeral services or a plot in advance. I mean, that's not something, that's not discretionary income. And, but they are residents, who pay taxes, pay fees, et cetera, et cetera. And so I would hate to see us, have a unintended bias that, and then you apply, and I'm thinking about the grandson situation then, because obviously if the person purchased the plot in advance, then it, and they're a resident, it all works. But I'm thinking of the situation that Claudia is talking about, and it really does have kind of an unintentional income bias in it.
We can look into it,
Yeah.
and I could be wrong, but I believe there's even cases where the funeral home takes care of those procedures. And so how would you determine that based on the funeral home's, place of business? So, yeah, those are things definitely worth looking into, and we can talk about
Yeah,
that.
because there's people that live in Pocatello that go to a funeral home in Chubbuck.
Sure.
So,
They have prepaid plans.
And,
Yeah.
and the other part of it is, I understand John's perspective, because there's a lot of people who, as they age, may move to a different location, but they really intend to be back here. And if they haven't participated in 20, 25 years, they're probably not a resident.
Maybe a family plot was purchased and, the wife passes, I don't know, say 2 decades earlier, and then the husband, because of ill health or whatever reason, has to leave the state for care from another family member, and then comes back to be buried in the family plot. So that's why we typically do it on the plot purchaser
Yeah,
for
no,
residents.
and I understand that.
It's a tough thing.
I'm just not liking the other part.
Yeah.
Okay. Move to fee, commercial activities in parks. Questions there, council? Recreational programs and rental fees.
Why is women's volleyball so much more than baseball and?
Women's volleyball.
Just curious.
It says team fee.
Yeah, it's a team fee.
Oh, that's the team fee, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Okay, yeah, I should read the whole thing.
Whereas the youth are all individual
Right,
participant
yeah, no, I'm
fees.
tracking.
I would like to have hiking trips charged a fee. Is that when we take them on?
I think we do
You
charge.
charge any fee you want with those people you are taking on.
But, hiking trips, it's on Exhibit N.
Yeah.
Well, they are,
Is
he's
there.
putting in a fee.
Yeah, but I don't know, if I come into Pocatello and want to hike the Greenway Trail, I don't know that I should be charged a fee.
So the question is, are we
Are
sponsoring
we
that
leading
and
it?
we are taking them on a
hike.
It's not,
Correct.
not
Yeah,
Joe Schmo comes in
everyone can
and-
go and explore City
Yeah.
Creek or Mean Creek or wherever at no cost, but if they would like a
guided.
guided hike,
Okay.
that's what we
Look, there's
charge
the
per
magpie.
person.
Oh, look, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Some of them we can tell them, take a hike.
Okay, then Parks and Recreation Program rental and admission fees for parks
I have a
activities. Yeah,
I have a
Claudia.
question, John. It's, I had somebody reach out to me and say that they can't go to classes at the rec center during the summer periodically because we've got all these school buses full of kids from all over Idaho coming to use our rec center. What is that about? Why are kids coming from like Cassia County to use the rec center here? Do they not have a rec center in Cassia County?
I'm not sure why they're coming here. I think our center is pretty popular and we've got some amenities that are a lot of fun for the kids, but they do come and this is the time, and there
Right.
tends to be about a 2-week period where we're inundated with those types of end of school field trips, and it will inconvenience the facility
And
for a
those
short
schools
period.
pay to
Yes.
use the facility? Okay.
Where
Okay.
do the buses park in the parking lot? Is that the problem for the folks?
No, that they
not
can't, the
typically.
classes are canceled because the kids have overrun the rec center, so they're telling
take all
people
day.
there's no yoga, there's no Pilates, there's no Taekwondo or whatever you go to. So, but that, okay, I
Parking's usually not a problem. We ask them, if it's inundated, we ask them to park on the street, and, not have the big honky bus in the parking lot. So it's been okay.
Do we include that closure, I assume we do, in like annual calendars and stuff, so people aren't caught off guard that suddenly their class is canceled and they
Well, they
know that
announce
it's
it.
not?
Yeah,
it's-
Stacy makes
like being
everyone
closed for
aware
Christmas or
with email
something.
blasts and other things.
Yeah.
And the instructors do as well, so.
So on the school field trip activities, the $10 fee for the rec center per student. So a teacher would have to pay, say, $310, $350.
Or the school district or whoever,
Probably,
yeah.
yeah, school district.
So it's a good revenue source.
And it's not major portions of the year. You've got about a 2-week period where
Right.
it's hot and heavy and then it subsides, so.
okay.
Okay, then we'll jump to the rental admission fees, Parks and Recreation. N.
What's skate ski? I
Skates-
haven't done that. What is that?
It's a technique of cross-country skiing, from what I'm told. I'm not an authority on it either, but popular. It's
Oh, okay.
just a different.
So it's
different
cross-country
technique.
skiing.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was something else that I would need to
It
like
just looks
try.
like
It's
skating.
different skates, different skis, and you don't have poles.
Oh, no poles. How am I going to get up when
No,
I
it's just
fall?
the technique.
You basically skate, you skate on the snow.
I need one of those. I've fallen and I
Right.
Okay,
Okay,
gotcha.
then the next slide, if I don't, no other questions. Ross Park Aquatic Center fees. Okay, Community Recreation Center fees.
Let's go back to the park, to the Ross Park
Ross Park.
Aquatic Center. If we can get that slide replaced, what do you anticipate the cost to use the slide be? Because that's going to be separate from the $35 plus card, right?
It is. yeah.
Right.
So
What would you anticipate that being? $10 or $5 or?
we do have a specific fee for that. Let me tell you the right thing. Water slide, all-day use is $3, one time is $1.
And you think you'd leave it at that?
If we got a new slide, we would probably increase it the next opportunity.
Okay.
Does it make any difference, make anything any easier to, I suppose it's better to have a placeholder.
Yeah,
list
oh, I think
than-
we
than-
have to leave it in.
It will be there, yeah, for sure. And
Then, nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Community Rec Center fees. Questions? All right, then continued. All right. Parks and Recreation Facility use fees. Okay, we'll move to zoo. That's it.
Okay.
All right.
So
Thank
council,
you.
with that being presented today, the next steps will be preparing a public notice that just mentions what departments are changing fees, increasing fees, or adding fees. We'll have a public hearing. That's usually the same time we have the public hearing for the appropriations ordinance. And then we'll ask you to pass a resolution, and that'll be the fee schedule for fiscal year 2023.
Okay, we have a question by Josh.
Will the public hearing include the moving, because you mentioned that the fee schedule now includes fees that were pulled from ordinances that aren't changing. Is that public hearing going to involve that as well?
So if the fees are new to the resolution, then yes, that will be part of the notice for the public hearing. But if the fees are just moving from one exhibit to another and they're not changing, that won't be included in that process.
Is there a way to communicate if it is new to the fee schedule? Am I just making sure I understand correctly? There are fees that used to be in ordinances that will now be on the fee schedule?
Correct.
Is there a way to communicate to people prior, whether they be in the public, prior to the public hearing, that some of those fees that they're going to see that are appearing on the fee schedule are fees they're already being charged? They're not new fees, they're just now being moved into the fee schedule. I worry about having a room full of people who say, I can't believe I'm being charged X for this. I've never been charged that
Always
before.
have been.
When you always have been, exactly.
So definitely, we can make a notation. The public hearing that is actually published in the newspaper does not have all the line item details. But what it does is it links you to a portion of our website that does have all those details. And so we will note, and I'll ask Andrea to make a note of that, we will note that some of the fees that are now in the resolution have always been charged. They're not increased, they're just moving from ordinance to resolution.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll move to agenda item 7, liability insurance, risk management, workers' comp insurance.
It's right there. Will you drive that?
Broke it.
Breaking stuff already. No, over one. Clean your blinds.
Okay. Yes, it's good afternoon, council. Ann Butler, I'm the risk manager. I'm joined at the table with Andrea Henderson. She's the deputy risk manager. We're here to talk to you today about the liability and the workers' compensation budgets. There's two separate ones. First, risk management is made up of myself and half of Andrea. So there's just 1.5 of us.
The right half or the left half?
She's a good half, though.
The good half.
Or top or bottom.
So our proposal for fiscal year 2023, you'll see labor and benefits. There was a slight decrease there. That is our current wages, not proposal for next year. And that was just a discrepancy we found in the salary file. I think it was left over from Kirk. So it was a slight decrease. We do have two changes in the operating lines. One was a decrease of line 4005 for consulting. We brought some functions in-house and found some more efficiencies there. So it was a decrease of $14,500. But we did have an anticipated increase in premiums on line 6104. That's from ICRIMP, and that is based on our 5 years history of our claims. So we are anticipating about $50,000 increase there, which is a difference of $36,000. And then, so our overall is an increase of about $29,000. Okay. Workers' compensation budget. There are no people in that budget. Our operating budget is $1.2 million. We had 3 increases. They are all contract increases that we're anticipating. The first one is line 4019. It's an increase to our Intermountain Claims contract of about $4,100. The second line was 4099. It's a Morton increase of about $1,500. That's a contract we have with them. And then the remaining is what we're anticipating is about $19,200 in premiums of our excess policy increasing for a total of $24,910. Okay. I did get a question about the modifier, so would you hand that out? And so I prepared a quick summary of what a modifier is, or an E-mod, because that's not something you guys are probably familiar with. And I thought we'd go over that real quick. So thank you for the question, Councilman Mansfield.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So a mod or an E-mod or an experience modification factor is essentially our safety score for work comp claims, okay? And it ranges between 0.7 and 1.4, okay? So of course, the lower the number, the better. The higher number, the worse we're doing, okay? It's a calculation of a 3-year history, okay? And it takes into account our actual losses divided by our expected losses. And then it has some weights in it. And I don't want to explain all of those today based on reserves, if the claim's still open, those type of things, okay? So we're feeding our premium, or what we'd be paying a premium to someone else because we're self-insured, so we're feeding that into our budget at 0.85, okay? That's our current modifier, okay? That third bullet I provided is our history of our claims history and what that modifier is. So this year, we just got our modifier at 0.88. Okay, so you can see we're a little underfunding that. The year before, 0.82, so we were up just a tad, right? But our modifier, we've been begging to go up. Okay, so in that time period between 2017 and 2020, when we had a really high between 97, 93, 103, we were funding that at about 70%. Okay, so we know we're a little bit behind, and that's why we keep coming every year and asking for more money. Okay. We would like to increase again. That's on your ask list here. It's number 6 on that big ugly spreadsheet. So it is separate from our budget. We had to anticipate what that might look like for the 15% at the time, and we didn't have CBA information for salaries because salaries is the biggest part of that. So we really need to project that after you guys to decide what you're doing with salaries. We guessed very high at 350. I personally don't think it's going to come in that high. I think it will. Last year we increased 10% and it was about $140,000. Now it takes into account fire and police, so those wages, their rates are a little bit higher than ours. Okay, so I'm kind of guessing it's going to come in around 200 to 250. That's my estimate if we bid off the whole 15%. Okay. I'd love to see you do that because I know we're going to be behind given the claims that we've had in the last month. Okay, and I might be coming back to you and asking for more money given those claims. But if you choose to bite that off in half, 7.5 this year and 7.5 next, or 3 years at 5% to get us close to that, I'm guessing our mod for next year is going to be closer to 1. And we're going to roll off that 0.79, which is a really good number. Okay, so we know that we need to be putting a little more money away for that rainy day.
So are people getting physically injured, or are they other types of claims? Are they physically breaking on the job?
They're work comp claims. So our normal, so every time someone gets injured, then a reserve amount is set up for that injury. Mm-hmm. Normally that's something pretty minor, but occasionally we have more aggressive injuries, and we have had one in the last 2 or 3 weeks in the police department. And we're normally running reserves at about 400,000 total. Right now we're over $1 million because of those 2 claims. So I know that this needs to go up and it needs to stay up for a while. So I guess this is a good example to say that day's here, that we need to kind of plan for that. And it will be slow, and I do know from an indemnity perspective, those 2 claims, we will be able to file some of that against the Peace Officers Indemnity Fund. So we will be able to offset some of the time loss benefits. but we still are on the hook for the medical portion. Okay? So that's our last slide is, please help us increase that modifier. I know you've got a lot of other factors to consider, a lot of other pieces to the puzzle, but that's where we're at.
Okay, Roger.
So what would be a 7.5%? What does it turn into dollars?
We'd have to run a projection file
No,
on
but
that.
just give me a,
Well, we ran 10% last year, around 140. So I'm guessing it'll be slightly more than that just because of the wage increases with police and fire. I can get you better numbers
so if it
once you
was
decide.
140 last year, you're saying probably 150?
Maybe a little higher than that, just because I know police and fire's increases are already set, and they're the ones that are really the driving factor of this
Okay.
So if
math.
we use 200,000, that would be, we'd be probably within safe guessing distance.
Yeah, I think you'd put a pretty big chunk at it at 200,000.
And so one of the other things is, do you think our, the claims we will have could reduce what we have?
It is possible. Those reserves are set at a moment in time, and I am hoping that at least those two claims, the reserves will come down a little bit. I think there will be some salvage. But if, you have another catastrophic claim, or you get a PTSI claim or a cancer claim, that could be expensive.
So at what point will we actually get a dollar number to factor in versus a percentage number?
Once you guys kind of figure out what, I know of police and fire increases, but if you determine what general employees are, what their increases, we could run a projection file and I could give you 5, 7.5, 15, whatever you want.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Then let's move to our legal department. Jared Johnson, city attorney, and Andrea Henderson, legal liability specialist, will give us a presentation.
Hello again, Mayor and Council. This promises to be quick. It promises. I can't promise that, though.
He's an attorney promising a quick thing. It doesn't make sense.
So our legal department is made up of the following positions under this org chart. This is a result of last year's restructuring of the legal department that involved restructuring in both risk and HR as well. This is an organization that I feel is most effective given our current caseload, our current workload, and our current personnel needs. And so there's that. We anticipate at this point with the numbers that we have, and this is preliminary, but there has been a reduction in pay and benefits. That is pursuant to Mr. Bybee retiring last year. He was, quite a ways long on the pay scale. And then the restructuring created some different positions within those attorneys. All three attorneys are now just deputy city attorneys. We don't have division chiefs like we used to have. We are asking for an increase in operations. Part of that is to increase the payment that we agreed to with the Westlaw subscription that we use. That is our primary legal research tool, vital to be able to provide and obtain legal research for both criminal and civil matters. And then we're asking for a small increase for our training and travel budgets. Hotel rooms, gas per diems, and registrations for training have just all gone up. That's just the way the world is. And we value the training that the city provides the employees, and it's crucial for attorneys to be able to maintain that training and meet those certifications so they can keep their licenses. Overall, it's a decrease, but again, this is contingent on what the council decides to do with salaries of employees. The number of authorized positions in the legal department hasn't changed in the last 5 years. We're still at 2018 amount of 7.5. Again, that 0.5 is the other half of Andrea. She's in both camps. And so that's always where we've been. It actually has been higher than that. There used to be 5 attorneys in the legal department. I believe that changed in 2015. Until last year, quite honestly, we needed another attorney, but with the reorganization and the restructuring of what we did with risk, we're managing very well with 4 attorneys, and I feel like we can continue to do that. And ultimately, that is what I state here. That restructuring has been a good thing for those 3 departments, and I feel like we are currently in a position to handle what we have and be able to handle some significant growth. If we have an explosion of growth, we might be having a different conversation. But at this point, I feel really good about where the legal department is and our ability to handle the legal services that we provide the city of Pocatello. And remember, about half of that service is the criminal prosecution. If you looked at the service level reports that were issued, you can see that 3 of our attorneys spend a good portion of their time on criminal prosecution, and then we have the civil duties as well. And that is all I have.
Questions for Jared? Okay. He wasn't kidding. It was quick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
So we are going to take a short break before we move into agenda item 9. So thank you very much for joining us after our quick break. And it was quick, I just might add.
Yes.
We'll jump to agenda item 9, Pocatello Regional Airport. Alan Evans, Airport Manager, and Christy Hines, Management
Bring
Assistant,
that up. I'll talk to her.
will give a presentation.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing us to be here today. Our first slide, obviously, is our Kazuna Garden at the airport, and if you haven't been out to see that, spring is a great time. We just cleaned that up last week, and it's very beautiful. A nice place to go and take pictures or whatever. Our second slide is our organizational chart, and nothing has changed in that. It's the same as it has been for some time. We do have basically 2 divisions. Our equipment operators fall underneath the maintenance side, and then our operations specialists fall underneath my direction as the airport manager. So,
What is it? Sorry,
Oh,
what
go ahead.
exactly is an operations specialist? Is that the people who run the ramp up to the plane and connect it?
No, the airlines primarily take care of that themselves to get to the airplane. The operations specialists are the guys who open up the facility in the morning, do the runway inspections, all the safety inspections, issue the NOTAMs, the notice to airmen of what our conditions are like.
Oh, okay.
And so that's a shift work job, and so we have to have somebody there full-time monitoring those conditions.
And so they have to be there, like the tower's open until 10, so we have to have a person there
Yeah,
during those FAA.
presently,
required hours.
we're operating till 10 o'clock. We shifted our hours with those guys. It used to be midnight when the flight was later coming in.
Right.
Our operations would be there a little later.
Right.
But right now, it's 10 o'clock, so we've made some adjustments.
And then when they find something that needs addressed, airfield problems, maintenance comes
Goes
and
in
takes
there
care
and
of
it
it.
takes care of it.
They'll call them out. If they come first thing in the morning and there's snow on the ground and we're not aware of it, they'll get them dispatched. So that's what those do.
We do have one open position right now, an equipment operator. We interviewed for those Tuesday.
2 days ago, yeah.
So I think we're about to fill that
So
and
we'll
we'll be
be
fully
fully
staffed.
So here's a question that will display my ignorance of airport operations, which is freely admitted. So I'm the operations specialist. I come, I find, I don't know, that something has happened overnight that needs addressed. I notify the maintenance people, and then what do I do? I mean, like while they're taking care of it, what am I doing?
Yeah, it would depend on what the situation was. I mean, if it's just, if it's a field condition problem where we've had some drifting or something like that, then their job at that point, after they've dispatched maintenance to come address it, would be to make sure that NOTAM or that airfield condition is out. So any pilot that may be looking to take off realizes there
Got
could be
it.
a potential delay until they can clean this up.
Okay.
And if you're asking how they fill the rest of their day, because obviously
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
not a
essentially.
problem minute
Yeah.
after
Right.
minute, we utilize them in some maintenance aspects as well. They do a lot of mowing, they do wildlife control, they do all of my security checks. They've been doing our custodial while we haven't had a custodian. On the weekends, they're the only custodial present, not president. So they're kind of our eyes and ears. They do whatever needs done to fill in between the actual airfield duties.
At flight time, they are there to monitor the exit lane, make sure no one's going up and down
They
that.
monitor all of our alarms, access control alarms.
And they do help the airlines with needs. A lot of times there'll be multiple wheelchairs that need to be rolled up or taken care of, and they'll help with that too. So they've got a pretty broad spectrum of duties that they take care of. All right. Our next slide, our following slide will explain this a little bit more, but I think the thing to take from this is our airport total there in the middle. We're looking at about a 2.8% difference in our budget. And we can explain that as we go forward on the next slide.
And as with all of the other ones, it doesn't include anything with payer benefits.
Correct.
So it's no change in payer benefits.
That's correct. We are fully staffed, or we will be once we fill this position at 11. And I will just say I appreciate the ability to fill that 11th position a couple of years ago in budget. That really has helped us out in fulfilling our duties that the FAA requires of us. When we were really at a standstill, when somebody would go on vacation, we would really have to alter what happened out there.
Point out a mistake. We have two funds. We have 006, which is our operating fund. 072 is our capital construction fund, which is mostly grant funded. I put two Department 006 totals.
Yeah.
That bottom one should say Department 072, and it went down. It's just a matter of when the grants come in, when the projects get closed and opened, and so that one actually should say 072.
We'll fix that. I think,
Well,
You have a question?
I'm a little confused because, and I thought Christie just said that the 2.81 doesn't include any wages and benefits increase, but it actually does because we're increasing. It's like
Sorry.
2,881.
Yes. Nothing from what the council may decide to do with wages or benefits. That is the change that just happens due to
That's
position
just the step
shifting,
stuff.
employee
Okay.
shifting.
All right.
I believe one of our, when our custodian was a employee only, actually, he was an employee only. We've had to rehire for that. They automatically program it at family. So it's those types of things.
Okay, gotcha.
That cause that little change, but.
okay. Very good. So as she said, we have two different funds. The first we'll address is Fund 006. And most of the changes to this line were increased by about 3%. Not all of them were. We looked very closely at what we thought we could hold back on, but there were some costs that we know are definitely going up, and so we've added a 3% to parts and lighting and those things that we're paying much more on.
When will we know if it says provide a possible SCASD, and I don't know what that means, but anyway, grant application.
Oh, okay.
When will that be decided? If it's possible.
So what that is, we can go to that. The consulting services, we're looking at increasing that by $15,000, which isn't something that we've generally budgeted. The SCASD grant is the Small Community Air Service Grant, and that's the one that if you recall, we went to when we wanted to get the Denver service. We may need to apply for that once again, and so we're going to need some additional funding for our consultant to help us get that application put together, and then also for other presentations we may need to do as we go to air service conferences in the future.
And do we have any idea? I mean, when we were talking about the SkyWest situation, it sounded as though expanding, this was not a time where it was a good bet to expand service, and so I'm wondering if that's correct, then
And in talking with all the airlines and at the conference we went to and our consultant, they've all said definitely this year expansion is not possible, but they have said 2023, maybe 2024. The grant cycles, they seem to change every year. I believe it's somewhere around, I think it's still in the application phase. I think they come out in July, so it would probably be next summer. Next spring, we might have to be deciding if we want to apply. So yes, it's possible if we put this in here and then everybody says it's not
So
gonna
we're kinda
happen, there's no
talking
reason to waste our
24.
money.
Right.
I mean, if it were granted,
Right.
we'd be talking about 24
Right, we
versus-
would
okay.
apply next year, but the service would be implemented.
And that particular grant, as we understand, a lot of times you have about 3 years to use that if you are awarded that. So we would just want to see, is this the time that we feel we have the best opportunity to go get that, or where do we go with it? So that's what that 15,000.
Presumably,
is there.
if that were included in your budget, then it would be set aside and held harmless until such time as it could be applied
That we use it.
for
Right,
that
of course, it would have
purpose
to be within the
versus
budget year.
accidentally end up going somewhere else.
Josh?
Just want to make sure that I'm clear. All of these bullet point notes on increases are included already in the table summary that you gave us on the previous
Correct.
slide.
Yeah.
So that
Overall, it's
2.81%
2.8.
overall
Is what this
includes these
consists.
5% or more.
We just wanted to
increases.
point out the ones that were.
Right, this
Great.
is highlighted.
Okay, that's great. Just
So-
wanted to
Gas
make
and
sure I
oil,
understood.
of course,
And
is a
so,
big
yeah,
one
as you can see,
there.
gas and oil that she just mentioned, we were projecting by Tom's numbers that were given to us a week and a half ago or whatever that was.
Yep.
Who knows where that's going to be. And that's going to be a big increase. We have not raised that line item for some time, quite honestly. And as we were talking about that, we've got some additional equipment. We're doing a lot more brooming. We're doing some things on the runway that is more labor intensive. And our fuel usage definitely has gone up. We've been able to absorb it and we've done fairly well, but
of course,
where it's
price has
at
gone
now,
up
we're a
now.
little bit concerned with that. Okay, and then the next, do
$64.99.
you want to talk about the contractual services?
So $64.99 is where we would house what might estimated to be the remainder of the revenue guarantee for SkyWest in budget year '23. So it would be October, November, December is a guesstimate of what might be needed, so that we would have expense authority to do that if it was needed. So that is just the line item that we would house that in. So that line item shows a $210,000, 210% increase.
Do we have our quarterly report from them yet?
We do not. We don't have a signed contract yet, so there's been no invoice. So we have no formal report yet till we get a formal invoice. Soon as the contract goes through and gets signed, if it does, we could immediately provide
I
that.
thought you got some kind of numbers before there was any discussion of contract. I thought they apprised you of.
Right, the 800,000 was based on what their estimate was, so you could take 3 months of that. But we have been provided with some estimates of what first quarter might be, we just haven't been given a formal invoice.
Okay, right, because I was going to say, they gave you
Yeah, of
reports.
course, they're already tracking it, they know what their costs are,
Right.
but they just don't invoice us until we have a formal
Oh,
signed
no,
agreement.
yeah,
so.
yeah. Okay.
The last one is our operating capital, if that makes sense. The 072 is our airfield capital that's grant funded. This is our operating capital to do improvements in the terminal and other buildings we own that aren't on the airfield. We used 65,000 this year as well to replace some HVAC units and things like that. It was just housed in a different line item because we had the stimulus grants, and so it was in the line item with the stimulus grants is what we used for that. So this year, we've just moved that 65,000 to our actual 500 capital line because we don't anticipate getting another grant to cover that. In that case, we would like to cover it with our remaining monies that we had in the 078 fund, which was $60,289. The remaining $4,700 we would like to pull out of reserves to be able to do a couple more HVAC units, painting of some
We've
hangars
got
and
some hangars
repairs
that
to
need
some
painted, some
warehouses.
roofs that need some repair for a service.
And where are you, I mean, since our policy calls for a 25% reserve, and I believe last time I asked, I was told that that is figured by department, not an
Right.
overall city number.
Right.
And so where are you in terms, where is the airport relative to having a clearly set aside in 78, 25%
Yes,
reserve?
and so, yes, we do. I believe finance, last time I talked to Brandy, was working on getting each department's reserves and what the 25% level is. I've been tracking it myself for the last couple of years, so I wanted to make sure my numbers match her numbers. But we are well above that with the stimulus money that's been coming in. It has helped to free up reserve funds, so we have well in excess of 25%.
And then the last there is the total increase in tax support needed, excluding any changes in compensation and benefits, would be about $20,894.
We do have some increases in revenue because we've increased all of our tenant leases by CPI and that. So $20,894 is what would be left to fund that 2.8% increase in our budget that the revenue can't cover.
Right. And then Fund 072, the changes In that, obviously, we're doing the BLM base expansion. That is revenue neutral. That's $1.5 million. That project's taking place right now and moving forward with a quick timeline coming up to finish that. So the timing of the FAA grants and the projects, as Christy has mentioned, we have multiple year grants that are open, and it can be kind of hard to track
So
exactly.
it makes that fun. 6 million one year, 1 million the next year.
Right. Our airport improvement projects that we're going to be doing include the completion of the airport master plan, which is ongoing right now. We are going to be doing a pavement management plan, which is required by the FAA to do every so often to see where your surfaces are at and what needs to be done. There will be some parking lot maintenance. That nothing has been done in that parking lot since it was put in, so it's getting time for that. And then there will be design of runway 321 and a new taxi lane. And we're going to be redoing that primary runway at some point in the near future. And this will just be the start of looking at that design and what we need to do to make that happen. The bipartisan infrastructure law, the projects that we can include underneath that would be a new loader with a 20-foot plow, straight push plow and bucket. We'll be replacing loader that we've had for a number of years, but I think the last loader we got was in about 2000. So we're due for another piece of newer equipment there. A parking lot plow truck with de-icer, and that's going to be primarily used in our public parking lot out front to keep that a little safer and keep that cleaned up and in a better, I guess, safer environment for our passengers. And then we're going to replace access control systems in the terminal and on the vehicle gates. That system is a little bit older and it needs to be updated as well. So those are the things we'll use that money for. Some of our concerns and our issues, a significant amount of reserves and capital contingency savings are going to be needed, as we've mentioned multiple times, over the next 3 to 5 years to replace, obviously, our passenger facility charges, which are definitely down due to the pandemic in general. And that's what we use that money for, is our match money for these FAA grants. So we're going to need those reserves. I will mention also that we're still losing a little bit of revenue. The rental car agencies are not back to where they were pre-pandemic. And so there is a little loss still going on there, and we're hoping that will come up. We're hoping for a very good fire season. That will help our revenues a little bit. But
we're not hoping that.
But not here in Idaho. We want that somewhere else.
Chief O'Hearn's over here.
Forestry turnover and.
Off his
Not in
chair for
Pocatello.
Tom had to stop him from coming after.
Southern Utah. No, it's, yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, we're hoping our revenues will come in good this year. And then the last thing, any revenue that is made available due to the stimulus grant funding that's not needed for operational expenses, obviously will be put into capital reserve funds. So,
Roger?
The BLM base expansion, it's revenue neutral in terms of the expansion. Will that footprint, will that create more revenue for you?
There will be a slight increase to their leased premises, and so their rental rate will go up a bit. It's not as much as they'd hoped. They wanted to expand more off the end of the ramp, but they didn't have enough money, so.
Okay.
But their rent will go up a
It
little
will
bit.
increase landing fees and fuel fees.
Yes, operational revenue, they'll
That
be
side of
able
it.
to
Yeah, so-
service more DC-10s all at once, so.
So it depends on how much they take off and land, right?
right.
Yeah.
And my understanding, I mean, this is kind of speculation, but I'm understanding that they're putting some more 757s in some of this larger fleet. So we may see not just the DC-10, but we may see some other very large air tankers utilize our
So
facility.
this could become a facility that services much larger area.
Already is.
We
are
serve
the only
quite an
base in the
area.
Great Basin region that can take
Yeah,
their
but-
DC-10s.
747s.
Yeah.
7-state region.
I believe that was their goal with putting the money in Pocatello with what we had and what we could do from this facility. It made sense to put that investment in.
And they can get in and
And
out
grow
of here
it.
compared to other places.
Much better. So, yeah.
Okay. Other questions for? Super. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then we'll move to agenda item 10, information technology.
Good thing it's not the fire department.
Back over there
Mayor Council, Chris Sorensen, Chief Information Officer for the city. If I was a betting man, I would have never thought I would be presenting today with this agenda having 10 items on it and me being at the end of the agenda. But we have all done well to get to where we're at, and hopefully this will be fairly brief. There's the obligatory org chart for our department, same number of individuals. We did reclassify one of the positions, our network engineer. We reclassified as a network cybersecurity engineer in order to eliminate my annual request for a cybersecurity person. And that was approved, and we are happy to have that position now with the duty description of a network cybersecurity engineer. This is our projected budget for the coming year. Again, in the pays and benefits, those are changes that happened during this year as a result of benefits and reclassifying that one position. That budget does not include projected pay or benefit increases that may be approved later in these procedures. Our operations costs have gone up 5.5% roughly, primarily because of our maintenance contracts that we utilize for the software systems that we operate here in the city. Our capital outlay continues to stay the same, and transfers, again, are kind of out of our control. It depends on what the other departments are going to be charging, but those are the estimated reflections there for an overall increase of 3.43% in our budget. Our manpower stays the same at 7. It has been there now for about 4 or 5 years. The last increase we had was when the video department went away and we absorbed the audiovisual function for the city. It's just kind of a summary of what we accomplished last year. They're very similar to last year's numbers. Most of the outputs have gone up a little bit. Nothing really significant to speak of there. Our website is still very popular with over 500,000 visits and closing in on 1 million page views per year there. And again, we manage and operate at least 45 different systems on our platforms. And we continue to operate at significantly lower numbers than the national average. And my very bottom note there is cybersecurity is and always will be our #1 concern. It only takes one cybersecurity incident to cause you significant heartache, and we hope to avoid that. So just a quick summary of where those increases are in my budget. We are seeing a $19,249 estimated increase in those maintenance contracts for a total of 7.2% in that line item. Most of that is in our central square. That is the majority of our maintenance costs. When we went to the cloud with Central Square 5 years ago, they kept us flat during those 5 years, and we saw no increases to those maintenance costs. We are now into year 6, and we are starting to see those cost increases being passed on to us, along with other maintenance agreements that we have in that line item. We do have a $12,600 increase in our training services line. The first year that we enrolled in a program called Central Square University, which provides the training for Central Square products, as well as many other management office type classes, that was completely funded by a grant that we received from our users group. That grant has now been has been utilized, and if we want to continue utilizing the Central Square University, it will cost us $12,600 for this next year.
Chris, we have a question. Josh?
Are we expecting to then see annual maintenance increases for Central Square moving forward?
Probably about 5% per year.
5% per year.
Estimating.
Okay.
We also keep adding items. One of the reasons why the Central Square keeps increasing in addition to the regular maintenance, they keep buying out other companies, Lucity, which planning and development engineering used quite extensively was bought out by Central Square. So that line now has moved under the Central Square line. So that's another reason why our Central Square costs keep going up.
Are we going to see that cost decrease then in engineering, for example?
We pay all those costs, so it's just a movement of the interfund transfers primarily.
Okay, Linda and then Claudia.
Just on the training services increase, and I know that was covered by a grant, and now it would include cost. And how do you feel that the benefit of that has been? Is that
I think the cost is a little. I think the cost is a little high for what we get. And to be honest with you, if you all said to cut it and not do another year of it, I don't think we'd be significantly hurt by removing that from our budget line.
If we did that, how would you sort of make up in terms of training?
There's still training
There's
that's
other
available
things?
within the tools themselves. It's just not quite as extensive. Right now, this is available to everybody, whether they're a Central Square user or not in the city. And again, it includes a lot of office management, professional type training modules that we just would have to give up. I think within the product lines and stuff, I think we would be fine.
Okay, Claudia. then
So is
Chris.
there another grant that can be applied for? to
Well,
cover
the
that?
user group has gone away, ma'am, and is no longer, that they dissolved within the last couple of months. And so the grants and money is no longer available through them.
Okay.
Chris?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. So based on Linda's question and your statement, are you saying we would be fine if all of that 12.6 went away or a portion of it?
That is the cost for the licensing. We went with the enterprise-wide license at that price because if you did it by the individual, it only took like 20 individuals and you were paying more than for the entire city to have access to it. So if we had individuals that needed maybe a module or so, we could probably afford to absorb those costs for 2 or 3 individuals, or the departments themselves could pay for those.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a handle on how critical, from your perspective, that 12.6
I don't think it's so critical. Again, ma'am, if you guys want to find a place to cut some money, this is an area that we would think we could offer up and save.
So with this 12.6 right now, everybody that works for the city can be trained in any of this stuff,
Right,
really.
no, yeah, I
And if that goes away, we would focus more on the different departments and
people,
what
yeah,
they were actually using.
Okay, just want to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting what you were saying.
No, that is where it is. And in our other line items, we're pretty flat in our budget. These
Right.
are the areas that we saw
Right,
the greatest
right.
increases. We do have one big project that we want to do. One thing that IT and Fund 50 has had the advantage of over the years is we maintain our own fund. Or the fund is maintained separate from everybody else, mainly because we're a combination of enterprise and tax funds because we're 100% interfund funded. And Joyce Jolsheim, when she was the CFO, allowed us to do that so that in our strategic plan, when we have large projects that come up every 5 to 7 years, we don't have to come to a tax ask for the entire amount. For example, when I first came in 7 years ago, our phone system was at the end of life and we had to do an upgrade on the system. And it cost us almost $90,000 at that time. So for the last 5, 6 years, we've been putting in $12,000 a year that has then not been spent, but has been put into our cash reserves at the end of the year. So that when we have a big project come up, that money would be there. But we're there when it comes to our phone system. And one of the things that is not in my budget right now, but we would like to add, and because it's not a tax ask, it's not in my regular budget, is we want to take the phone system that we utilize here at City Hall in the police department, and I got to look at my note real quick. I believe it's the water department, to migrate them from a premise system where we're tied in with CenturyLink and Fiscal, and we want to take the phone system to the cloud. We estimate that's going to cost us about $60,000. And in that $60,000, that includes replacing 210 phone instruments on the desks. Because when you go to the cloud and the type of system, our current phones aren't compatible, and we would have to switch them out with the new phones. As a result, things such as our long-distance calling will go away, because in the cloud, just like on your cell phone, you don't pay for long-distance charges. And so we will no longer be paying long-distance charges. There are other advantages to this. If we have to go back to a work-at-home type situation, individuals could actually take their phones from their office, take them home, plug them into their computers, and have access into our phone system without having to utilize their personal phones or things. They'd have to use their own data and whatever internet service provider they have, but they would be able to have that capability. They will also be able to transport numbers into their phone, cell phones and other things. There are a lot of advantages in the different systems that we've looked at. And when we get the approval and we go to we get into next year, if we have the funding available, we will bring a full presentation to you with what that contract will involve capability.
So Chris, we
Yes,
have
ma'am.
Chris and then Roger.
Does this move us any closer to being able to get connected on the N911 system? The
E911,
Well,
the
there's
enhanced
a-
911 system.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I was looking at it a year and a half ago, it was then called the N911 system. But anyway, the digital versus the landline. Or is this completely unrelated?
This is completely separate, ma'am.
Okay.
I worked a lot with E911 systems and stuff in the military, and it's just,
Right.
it is so fluid and changing, it's really hard
Right,
to
so
say.
this doesn't help us make that leap.
Okay, Roger.
So if we're using a cloud system, is this like a voice over internet system? And,
In fact, our current system is technically a voice over internet.
okay, and
system.
we haven't had any glitches with that. Is our emergency, will it be over that? Or
The
dispatch?
primary part of the police will move to this. The dispatch phone system is separate from our system.
Okay, so it'll still be conventional.
Should still be.
Claudia.
So is there going to be, and you might have said this and I missed it because I was reading, is there going to be, what's the annual fee or whatever for, because I mean, I'm sure
Yes,
being in the cloud isn't going to be free.
No,
so.
ma'am. We don't have the firm numbers yet, but based on what our current prices are and what we have seen, we've already moved several departments into the cloud. We're about the three that I mentioned, us, police, and water are the last. WPC, the airport, many of the others have already migrated to these systems and everything. Looking at our current bills and what our budgetary estimates were from a couple of vendors, we believe our costs will go down on a monthly basis.
He just
A
answered
lot of
my
that will be the long distance charges that will disappear for us. And right now, not only do we have the long distance charges, but we expend a lot of manpower breaking out those charges to the departments and billing the departments for them, because that is the way the previous CFOs wanted us to do it.
Okay, super.
Now, in addition to this, this project for cash reserves, we will be bringing you a budget amendment here shortly that we're going to also ask to use cash reserves to replace our fire suppression system in our server room. Right now, it's a wet system. We want to replace it with a dry system. That will take up about 50,000 of our cash reserves. And I know Councilmember Stevens is always asking about and is always curious about the cash reserves. Our cash reserves, the last time I checked, are approximately $540,000 in the Fund 50 cash reserves. 25% of our costs are about $353,000. So that leaves us about $190,000, of which we're looking to expend over the next year, probably about 75% of that excess reserves.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Claudia.
Could you explain just briefly, not in, technical terms? I understand what wet refers to clearly, but what is dry like a giant fire extinguisher that falls from the ceiling?
No, it's a dry powder system that will.
So instead of a sprinkler, it's a thing and it just sprays out powder?
The one we're looking at is actually mounted to the walls and will expel its stuff out. They used to have what they called halon, but if you got caught in a room when halon went off,
You had some
life
ugly-
expectancy of individuals caught in the room was very low. These are a very safe system. It will also have a pre-alarm that will sound, letting you know it's about to go off, so that if you are in the room, while it would be safe for you to be in the room, it gives you ample time to get out just in case.
If there's a fire, I'd be getting out anyway.
We recommend that if there is a fire or smoke.
People don't, though.
That, but again, if a wet system goes off, it would take out all, it would completely wipe out everything.
And so that system, that system is $50,000?
For the IT server room, approximately.
Okay, and then what is the,
You'll see one
This-
for the dispatch too later.
right, but the stuff that goes in it, the stuff that it sprays out, does that have like a shelf life of like a year, 6 months?
No, once the system's in, it covers it for the life expectancy of the system. I don't know what the time frame is on that, but it'll be quite long, I'm sure.
Oh, okay, so it's not like a fire extinguisher where the stuff gets bad and you have to replace, okay.
No.
Josh?
I imagine the estimated value of the equipment in the IT server room is pretty high. Could we see a decrease of insurance, property for our system if we have a dry system?
My guess would be no.
Yeah.
Okay, just curious.
And while the equipment itself is quite valuable, the data maintained on those systems is even
Got it.
much more valuable. The last item I have on there is one that building and planning and development will be bringing to you and theirs, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that they're looking at going to the community development module within Central Square and replacing an existing system. Well, while it will have an initial significant cost to bring in, the improvement to our system will be great and our annual costs will go down significantly. But I'll let planning and building go into the details on that system, but it has our full support and backing.
Any idea what the payback time frame would be? Just give or take?
Not off the top
Okay,
of my head.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, any other questions? All right, super, thank you very much. Then, thank you for joining us this afternoon, or this morning, and staying with us this afternoon. We are adjourned. And council, I'm confident that lunch is back there. It was